Wow, good crowd. So nice to see you and have you here today. How many of you have never been to the Breadbeckers before? This is a new experience for you. Very nice. Welcome, welcome. Did you hear about us because of Maria? Is that how you heard about it, or you just heard about it from somewhere else? Anybody here because of Maria? I mean, we're all here because of Maria, but Maria. Wow, we're going to go into song and dance here in a minute. But you heard about it maybe through Maria's sources. No, everybody's here because you heard of the Breadbeckers, and Maria, our guest today, is coming. I am just so glad at this crowd of people. I'm just really, really excited. It all never fails. When it rains, the class doubles in size, like really fast. Like on Wednesday, or, well, if it's real pretty, then the registration will be low, 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 and then all of a sudden, if the weather says it's going to rain, boom, it jumps up. So there's nothing else you can do, so you might as well come here and eat. So anyway, we just really, really want to welcome you. I just fell in love with Maria within 5 minutes of meeting her. I met her in September at the Natural Products Expo in Baltimore this year. And the reason I fell in love with her, well, not only because she just, as soon as you hear her talk, her voice, her accent, but she's just such a sweet and delightful person. And but then when I saw her book and just the whole thrust of it, she gave me a signed copy. I went back to my hotel room that night. And how many cookbooks do you actually read? All the beginning. I read every word of it, and I fell in love with her even more, and went back the next day and said, okay, what would you think of coming to our place and doing a class? Because I just love everything she has to say. Maria you'll hear her say she's old school. She does everything the old-fashioned way. She don't have a lot of equipment. But that's what I so want to stress in this day, and why I wanted her to come so much. First of all, I want you to see how tiny she is. Don't let anybody tell you that wheat makes you fat, because look at this lady. She eats grains and has all of her life. And that's what I think also that I love about her is she grew up eating grains. Mankind has eaten grains since the beginning of time, since God created us. And so I just want you to understand that grains are a staple. And it's just so interesting to me that in these days and these times, a lot of people are giving grains a really, really, really bad rap. And if you want my honest opinion, with the way the food industry is going and what all is being done to our foods and fruits and vegetables and everything out there, I believe, honestly, with everything in me, that grains are going to become one of our only reliable food sources. They don't have to be GMO. Yes, they are doing some things that way. They don't have to be radiated to store forever. They store forever. We're unlike your fruits and vegetables that rot. So there's just so many good things. They're the most nutrient-dense food group that God has given us. And I just can't stress enough the importance of grain, and that's why I love this book, Ancient Grains, because she just, every page is a grain recipe, and she has, I'm going to let her, will you tell your, oh man, her book has won so many awards. We actually put it on Facebook. She won the Julia Childs Award for very, very...
first cookbook.
Yes, for first cookbook. She's won New York Times bestseller, won a special diet award. I'm getting it all wrong, but because I don't have the paper in front of me, she's like, could you just stop? She'll tell you. Maybe she will. She's so humble. But just a great, great cookbook. And I'm so thankful to have her here. Let's just take a moment, though, to pause and just thank the Lord for the just abundance of grains that he's given us and food to nourish our bodies. Lord, we just thank you for this beautiful day. Sometimes we don't think it's so beautiful when it's cloudy, but I just thank you for the cool weather, for the time to just pause and learn from you. And I just thank you for Maria taking the time to come from her busy schedule to teach us just the incredible versatility and nutritious and delectable taste of these grains that you have given us to nourish our bodies. We just thank you, and we ask it for you to forgive us for altering your food and rejecting your food and thinking that your food that you've given us is not delicious. And I just thank you for this time. I pray a special blessing on Maria as she presents to us the ancient grains and these just delicious dishes to nourish our bodies. In Jesus' name, amen. Maria Speck.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having me. I'll never forget how I met Sue. This was very early when my book came out, and since then my life has taken a complete change. It's been turned upside down, literally, and I do think I need at least one assistant, if not more. I can barely cope. Thanks for having me. It's really wonderful. I love her passion, and she was truly a very early supporter here at Breadbakers, and so passionate and so enthusiastic about something that I also deeply care about, the way we eat and how to get more grains on our table. Now, my own story, I do need to tell, how should I say, I'm going to talk about the accolades later. I'm just going to talk about my own story. I'm German and Greek. My dad was German. My mom is Greek. She lives in Greece. And I was raised on delicious food. And we had grains on our table just as everyday, very tasty, part of our very tasty meals. In Greece, you know, anyone who's traveled or is familiar with recipes, we have bulgur. We have traditionally still eat wheat berries on our table. We eat barley rusks from really coarse ground barley. It's a traditional food. It's really delicious. They make it into salads. They soak it in water. Then they put olive oil, fresh tomatoes, feta, oregano. It's my husband's favorite breakfast when he discovered this. It's very aromatic, these traditional barley rusks. And they're having a huge comeback in Greece because also the Greeks have really forgotten about the Mediterranean diet. And so it's really interesting to see that they're also now remembering, you know, their more traditional foods. Germany, has any one of you traveled to Germany? I'm sure you've seen the amazing rustic loaves of whole grain breads that we have. Different flours, different textures. So not only, you know, so you'll have a very finely milled flour, you have a coarse flour. There's, you have them with, I have a recipe in the book of one traditional German bread. I call it aroma bread because it has cardamom in it, fennel in it. It's fantastic. I mean, you make it, you grind it, you know, as freshly, and then you put it into the loaf. It's really mesmerizing. And so when I came to the US, when I would tell people that I eat whole grains, people would kind of look at me and say, oh, you must live a very healthy life. And I would always kind of pause, not really know what to say, because I ate whole grains, because I love them so much. I love the texture, I love the flavor, and I even love the color of grains. They bring to our table, I think, phenomenal colors. And we'll talk about all of these things as, you know, as I'm also demoing some of the recipes from the book. And so what I felt when I lived here, I'm a journalist by training. I'm a home cook. So what you will see today is super easy. And don't tell me, oh, I wanted to see something really complicated. No. People are so afraid to cook grains today in America. I will show them anyone cook it. It's as easy as cooking pasta. And so everything you'll see today, you'll be like, this is why I'm coming here? Why did I even bother? But that's what it is. But I want you to go home and really cook them and bring them to your table and to lose all the fear. There's so much fear and so much concern, and we'll talk about all of this. So as I was working as a journalist for German magazines in the US, I was seeing people getting interested in whole grains. But all everyone was saying is, you better eat your healthy whole grains, or. And I was like, what kind of a message is this? I mean, we're eating. So food, we don't, I mean, yes, we all want to be healthy, and that's great. And I love that about whole grains. But unfortunately, the reality is if you chew through a very healthy bowl of wheat berries, you know, with no fat and low fat and who knows what, chances are very low that you'll ever eat it again. So what I tried to do with the book is to bring you recipes, and they're largely inspired by the Mediterranean because I was raised by a Greek mom, that are just so wonderful that you just will always want to eat grains. And that's my passion because they taste so good. And that's what I felt was completely lacking. I mean, wherever I went, it was always about the reprimanding, finger wagging, healthy whole grains. And that's just not working. We humans, we eat for pleasure. We want mouth-watering meals. We want things that we come back to every day. And that's what I was hoping with the book now. Why, you know, I'm very lucky, and sometimes life just, you know, works, you know, the timing of the book is obviously wonderful because Americans also have realized that, you know, 15 years of no fat, for example, has made us double in waistline. So we're learning slowly that it's all about whole foods. Last year, just after my book came out, Dr. Oz and Dr. Weil, both icons in American healthy eating, have stopped promoting non-fat dairy products, for example. Also recommending you eat whole milk products, because in your intestina, they say that they react like your body thinks they're eating sugar. So it's very interesting. So there's some, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a dietitian, but I thought it was very interesting, so that we also realize now that we need to look for whole products. And so in the book, I've done that as well. I much rather eat you a delicious whole milk Greek yogurt that you really enjoy. It's going to be a smaller serving maybe, but it's going to be mouth-watering good. And that's what I will show you today. I'm going to have one dessert also, because whole grains obviously can be eaten for breakfast. You're having a sample on your table. You probably had it, of honey nut granola with olive oil, breakfast, lunch, dinner, for, throughout the day. I mean, I want to demonstrate that to you, not just what a lot of people know about their oatmeal for breakfast, for example. Now, the beauty of life is sometimes, my proposal for this book was in a drawer for 3 years for certain personal reasons. And obviously I was burning to publish it, but I also couldn't find a publisher. My first agent dumped me. I mean, so there's all these things in life that happened, and also personal, my father died. So, all these things, this is just, you just don't pursue it. So this was in the drawer, and so then it came out this year. And I spent actually several months after I went to print in China agonizing, to the point that I had stomach ache, whether a book that promotes whole milk yogurt, has some heavy cream use in it, in moderation, but I use it because I want to make good food. Whether a book that comes to market on the American market, having lived here for many years, someone would write a review like something like, well, what is she thinking? Writing a whole grain cookbook using even butter. There's even like a little bit of bacon in one of the recipes for flavor. So I was waiting, and I was sick to my stomach, and then the book came out, and the absolute opposite has happened, which is really wonderful. I mean, it started very early on in the blogosphere, and then, others picked up on it. The LA Weekly wrote a beautiful review and made a little bit fun of me because I like these very delicious ingredients, but they were very sweet. And then suddenly the New York Times picked it as a best summer cookbook. Later they also picked it as a top, as one of their notable books for 2011. The Washington Post did the same. Cooking Light magazine picked it as one of the 100 best books of the past 25 years. So I don't know how I got into that, illustrious, it's unbelievable. And just 2 weeks ago in New York, the International Association of Culinary Professionals gave it 2 awards, the Julia Child Award for First Cookbook, which is really a huge gift for me personally. And, obviously I'm, admiring her work and what she's tried to do and what she's done for American eating. And then also it received the Health and Special Diet Award. So it's just taken off, and I have not taken a breath since. So thank you, and we'll talk about all your questions, because this demoing and what I'm doing today is I want to answer all your questions. There's so many misperceptions about grains, so much fear, how to cook them, when do I know they're ready, how do I store them? These are things I do very different than a lot of people that you will see in recipes. I want you to eat them, so I want it to be accessible and easy. So we're going to start with you've tried the honey nut granola with olive oil. How was that? Did it taste like salad? Because it had olive oil. I just want to make sure. It should not. Good. Did you enjoy that? Very nice, because what olive oil does, that's why I use it, and I'm actually not a granola fan, and this is only in the book because an editor, I was on assignment for a magazine in the US, and she said, oh, but we want a granola, and I'm like, oh, no, I don't like granola. So then I was challenged, and so I produced a granola that I liked, and then they said it was the best granola they ever had. So then I was very happy, and that's why it's in the book. So it's the reason I use olive oil is obviously, it's a wonderful, healthful oil, but we use traditionally in Mediterranean, we use olive oil also for baking. All across the book, I've done this, because it adds beautiful, subtle fragrance to baked goods, and also a nice crumb used in cakes. I have cakes in there that I use, and it's very much in the Mediterranean tradition. So, you know, when you would use maybe a vegetable oil, we would use an olive oil also in baking. So that's something, and I know you do that also in your bakery. And I love that. So we're going to make first, I don't know if you have the book in front of you, we're going to make page 168, the rosemary, artichoke rosemary tart with a polenta crust. Now this is for all the people that are afraid of making any crust, because it's not really a crust. It's a cheese-infused polenta, which firms up in a tart, and you can see it. And here's one beautiful sample ahead of you, so on the table. And so Sue has actually, let me show that. She's done the real thing. What I really love about her and her work, so she actually used corn and ground it up in a blender, which is fabulous. And there's a slight adjustment if you do that. If you get a finer texture, then you basically use a little less water in the recipe, and they have tested it. Caleb did, right? So instead of 1 1/4 cup, if you do this, you would use just 1 cup of water to get the same. This is basically the difference when you have store-bought products to freshly milled products. In my book, we're so far away in America from having people have mills at home that I had to use store-bought products. And I went with companies that I like, you know, like Bob's Red Mill, that also is very passionate about their products and the milling tradition. But, you know, if you have a grain mill, absolutely, you'll figure this out. I've also cooked a lot of the recipes in the book with freshly milled flours. It's not a problem. You're gonna be no problem. Anyone that has worked with fresh flours, they work slightly different. So you have to make some adjustment, but it's not going to be a problem. And if people have questions, I'm sure Sue or I, you know, anytime, I will be very happy to help. But I love that because you get a freshness that you never get in a store-bought product. So, let alone that it looks so pretty. So,
we did find that it needed just, like she said, a little less water, which she explains that in the book. But I found that it needed a little bit more than even the 1 1/4 cups. And you just, when you make it the first time, you'll see, you want it to be kind of stiff, and you'll see it when Maria makes it for you. So if you need to add a little more of the grits or polenta or whatever, I just sprinkled it in and kept stirring until it was a nice thickness.
That's what you want. That's what you want when you cook. You just see at the recipe, and it says if it's fairly stiff, or you use the Bob's Red Mill once to see how it should be, because that's what she did, what I had asked her to do. So then you can make the adjustment. I mean, that's what I would suggest, because that's always what you have. Oh, okay.
If anybody wants a book that didn't get one, if you would like to refer to it, or, you know, just all we ask, if you haven't purchased it, to just purchase it at the end. How many want books? Okay. And then Maria will be around to sign afterwards.
So the polenta tart, to come back to that, it's in the book because it's the laziest tart and easiest tart you ever, you know, make. But if you take it anywhere, you saw it, it's immensely impressive. And the only thing is, it takes time, but it's just waiting time. So you really can make it at the side. It's the most lazy thing. I've done it a million times. And as I said, people will love it, devour it, and it'll be very impressed. But it's super easy, no, you know, difficult crust or anything. So all we're doing is, let me get you. These guys have pressure cookers, so we're having. It's not the right lid. No. Oh, is that the right lid?
Yep.
Well, I should know, right? That's a fizzler. But that's a modern fizzler. I have fizzlers that are ancient. So they don't have the kind of, space shuttle design?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So it goes like that.
So bear with me. You know, I work in so many different kitchens right now, and everything is an adventure here when I go around teaching. So
yeah, this one actually is not. We have the fizzler pressure cookers in the back.
Yeah, no. The one thing, actually, if you do love to cook with grains, okay, so you don't need, but you can use a pressure cooker, crock pot, or you can cook them in the microwave. You can do all kinds of things. However, in my book, I have a very low-tech kitchen. To this day, I don't own a stand mixer because I simply never had, I came from Europe with one suitcase, just like any immigrant, I guess, comes. I was a night fellow at Stanford. I met my husband, so I stayed. So I just always managed just fine with my little hand blender. And I have a good one, indeed, like we have in Germany. But that's it. And so, great. And but what I want to say is the only thing you need. Can you tell me here?
Yeah, turn it down.
Turn it down. Yeah. Well, leave it up for another. You'll just watch it.
You want me to?
I'm just gonna. All you so bring it to a boil. You are here in the south. This is water and broth, half and half. I like that for flavor. If you use too much broth or stock and it's salty, your grain won't cook properly. I've learned it the hard way in a cooking class. We had like a buckwheat that never became ready. So I like adding a little bit of flavor, and then through the broth, vegetable broth or chicken broth, whatever you have on hand, and then I use water, or I just use plain water and I add spices to it, and we can talk about this in a minute. So what I'm doing here is in a slow drizzle, that's the only thing, and you use a whisk. That's really important because you don't want these to lump, right? That's the only thing that really can happen.
And you'll find that your grits that you grind yourself, if you do the corn and do it in the blender, it'll lump up even more quickly than the Bob's Red Mill. I don't know why, because this is a little more coarser grain. You get a little more flour.
That's why you need a good
exposed.
Whisk.
Yeah, so a good whisk, and just sprinkle it in slowly like she just showed you so that it doesn't clump up.
That's really the only thing. And for about 30 seconds, I don't know, does that, sorry, how is, oh, there's some numbers here?
Yeah.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and it stays pretty hot. We've discovered that.
Okay, that's fine. So what you do is for about 30 seconds, see how it changed? It was first liquidy, and now it's kind of a little firmer. Really, you can let go now for now. So what you do is, you want a little bubble, great. You see a little bubble? Okay, it's a bit bigger, but that's okay. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. You cook somewhere else. You just have to, your own stove, your own pots. What you need is, the only thing I wanted to say initially is, what you need is one good heavy bottom quality top pot, about this size, a medium size. Of course, if you're a large family, large one, and a tight fitting lid. That's all you need to cook grains well. So if you want to invest into anything, you don't need any other equipment, but I highly recommend that, because your grains, you don't want them to scorch. So that's all you need. So get one. I have my 3-pot set from, 25 or maybe many more years ago from Germany. It's a very good quality. I bought it at the time. At the time, it was hard for me to buy, but I've used them for 25 years. I put them on fire. I've done all kinds of things. They're still there. Flames came out this high, and this is one good investment, and I have really nothing else in my kitchen. Yeah. So, and for grains, you really want that. So let me check here. We want to give this a good stir.
And the nice thing about the Fissler pots is they are heavy duty. Mm-hmm. Yes,
I have
you will pay more than what you're going to see at Target or Walmart or whatever. But like she was saying, these will be there forever and ever. They're not something that's going to die on you. And the nice way the Fissler pots are designed, they're designed to expand and contract with the heat and cooling and heating and cooling. Doesn't matter if you put this right into cold water, if it's hot, it will never warp. You will always get a flat bottom. They're just an excellently designed pot and made pot. Just can't say enough about German.
It's really funny. I mean, the thing with the fire is really true. I mean, I remember I was on the phone with my friend, and in the kitchen, the flames were coming up, and it was a Fissler. It was undestroyable. I mean, Fissler is F like Frank, I, SSLER. It's really one of our leading German manufacturers for cookware, and they're really great. I mean, as I said, I have yet to have such a wonderful modern. Mine is really old-fashioned. So, so one thing. Mm-hmm.
This is 1.5 quarts, I believe.
This looks like a medium, what we would call a medium size, right? Or is that the
I'll go check on the exact. Yeah. We have 3 sizes.
Heat is low now, and so what I want to say, okay, in Italy, if you talk with someone about making polenta, my Roman friend, 1 hour as a kid, she hated it. She was put, kitchen duty with the wooden spoon and had to do that. Well, now, okay, you can stir it for 1 hour. It will taste sweeter, there's no question. However, if I'm hungry, I enter my kitchen during the week, famished with a capital F. I'm a journalist by training, as I said, sometimes working 12, 14-hour days. After 15 to 20 minutes, it's just fine. It's not. It's cooked. It's fine. So I've cooked it for an hour. Yes, it tastes better, but my home is not a 5-star restaurant. So, you know, that's the thing. We have to get real, right? We have to cook, we have to eat well, but it's completely fine, 15, 20 minutes often. And one other thing, no need to stir. Even Lidia Bastianich, famous, you know, our most famous Italian, you know, cookbook author and chef, even she puts a lid on, stirs about every 2, and what you want to do is, you will see this, you give it a good stir. You really want to give it a good stir. Do we have it like timed a little bit? Yeah, I'm just looking at my clock. So about 8 more minutes or something, right? So, because you don't want it to stick to the bottom, right? That's the only thing. So it's a vigorous stir. Close it again. Wait. So something like this can easily be done at the side while you know, make your vegetables or something. So it's not what the real Italian says. You stand there and you do that. Yes, you can, if you like. I have no time for that. Now, yesterday I had a great person. I will try this right away at home. For all of you who have a crock pot at home, someone told me what he does, and he learned that from the famous Anson Mill. It's a legendary Glenn Roberts. He founded the mill about I shouldn't say that right now. He's been growing heirloom rices and grains in South Carolina and sending them, you know, freshly milling them to order and sending them out then, and has a passion. He's really, you know, revitalized grains like einkorn, and, you know, he has also very interesting farro that they toast in the old, you know, old way. He, what did I want to say about the polenta? Oh yeah, so someone yesterday told me they learned from Anson Mill, put in a crock pot, everything together with the water, the amount and the broth you need, put the lid on, 1.5 hours on low. I want to try that. I think it's great. If you, one day, you know, on a weekend or something, and you have a leisurely meal, you just start this at some point. So obviously that'll bring out the sweetness, and I do know this is new that they recommend that. So I guess they were also hoping, you know, of course you get even more flavor with the slow. Everything slow is great. I mean, cooking meat slow for 10 hours in grease, we do that. Oh my God, I mean, you'll just be dripping and you want to swim in it, right? But the reality is I sometimes just need to eat. And so what we're having today is...
Or you have someone needing to eat that's standing there going, what's for dinner, right?
So that's what this is. My book is about how you all can do it when you're busy, because that's my life. And then we can do leisure and slow cooking and all of this. Absolutely, yes. And it will taste even more divine. So that's it. You see me, I barely do anything here, you know. So again, I'm talking and talking.
And I think we had a question back there.
Oh, yeah.
I put it in the blender. Yes, I used our mega blender that we sell because I was doing a lot. And this has a milling cycle, a milling blade, and it will actually pre-crack the grain and then mill it. A Vitamix will do it, but for a smaller amount, the little Tri-Best blender will do it. My blender attachment to the mixer, the kitchen assistant will do it. This is what I was going to do if we were going to use it in the class. But I love this one because it'll do a larger quantity at a time. So any of them, but yes, any good blender will coarse grind your grits. Or you can use the grain and spice mill attachment. If you those of you that may have the kitchen assistant, you can use the grain and spice mill attachment. Yes. An Oster like a food processor? A blender, yes. Yeah. Yes, any right. A food processor doesn't typically, but a good blender of any kind should be just fine. Okay, yes, for your grits, cream of wheat. You know, I don't know why Northerners give us such a hard time about our grits. They eat cream of wheat. It's the same thing, just made out of wheat. I mean, it's just weird, but they put sugar on it, so that's really weird. But you can do it. All right now, put the sugar in the tea. That's where it goes. But so that's a lot of people don't think about that. So that's a great tool. If you don't have a mill, just use a blender. Now it won't make flour, but it'll do your coarse grinds for your cereals, your cream of wheat, your grits, your polenta. Okay.
Great. Yeah. So how hard is this so far? It's really difficult, right? So can you tell? I mean, I barely pay any attention, right?
The hardest part is waiting.
Say again?
The hardest part is waiting.
That's
You're
exactly.
like,
so that's why I'm saying this tart, do it at the side, you know, like really do cook your dinner and do something else, but then take it for a brunch or, you know, to the beach. We've taken it to the beach. It's really good with a rosé in the summer or with a glass of beer in the fall. It's really, I mean, you'll have it shortly. Should we actually, did we talk, should we reheat them or should we just do them?
Well, they were at room temperature. Are they okay?
Yeah.
Should they be heated?
Should we do them
Okay.
at 325?
Okay.
For about
Okay,
15 minutes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
She is saying she
but
wants
we
them
have
heated
time,
just slightly.
you know.
I'm sorry.
So, and you see it's a light bubble, you don't want too much, and you do the only thing, see now it's got a little bit stuck at the bottom because I was sound asleep, as you see, so now you basically give it another good stir, and if you have a good pot, that's not a problem. See, it comes off. If you have a bad pot, it will not come off. That's exactly the difference. If you have a bad pot, you know, an aluminum pot or something, what will happen is it will get stuck, and you don't want that. With a good pot, you can always scrape it. You can see I give it a good stir, and that's it. So almost done. And what I'm doing now, basically, in a minute or two, I'll set it aside, another waiting time for another 10 minutes. And again, I just stir it once or twice so it keeps soft, right? It doesn't, because polenta, you all know that also, you're here in the South with the cornmeal. I mean, you make amazing things when it firms up, and you can, you know, bake it, you know, make little triangles. The same with polenta. I mean, polenta, where did polenta come from? From the Americas, right? In the 17th century, Columbus brought corn to Europe. And all of you probably have heard about what, you know, I think it's happened also in the American South, and it's still, I think, a problem in China. The Europeans had no idea. Native Americans treated corn, and also people across the Americas, in a process called nixtamalization. Do you know what that is? So, so you basically, corn lacks nutrition, like certain amino acids. And so what the native people understood is they treated it with a lime ash. And so it made the vitamin B niacin available, like the vitamin niacin available. It's one vitamin B, one of the vitamin Bs. And so people were fine, but people in Europe that didn't know about this traditional process, they were very poor. And so they ate corn when it came to Europe, which was not part. So this is, we're going to remove that now from the flame. Okay. So do we have a little something to put it on? So they were not familiar with this process that native people had figured out. Thank you. And they ate the corn, and they had nothing else. They were so poor. People in Italy, people in Greece to this day. And they got something that's called pellagra, which is sour skin, and that's a vitamin B deficiency, and they got really sick because corn, in the traditional diet, how do people eat corn? Like, how do they put it on their plate? Do they pair it with something? Think about the globe, or wherever you can think corn is eaten. How is cornbread eaten in America? With what? With what is it paired typically? Chili. How is beans and corn in you know, Mexico, any of the southern and middle American countries, Mesoamerica? Then how about in India, when we have a grain? Traditionally in India it would be rice. We combine it with a lentil or with a bean. So in the past, people understood that to combine food right for best nutritional value. And so that is really interesting for me to see how people had figured that out in the past. And that, of course, for us today, it's not so crucial anymore because we have usually too much of good food all the time. So we don't need to pair food in that way. In my book, I still do it. You know, for people that are vegetarians, it matters a little bit more. But again, our food supply is generally, we're overfed, not underfed. So that's not really a concern anymore. But if you have, you know, just a few things, if you just have a grain and not eat many other things because you're poor, then it's very good to combine it with beans or with a little bit of dairy, or you sprinkle some cheese or some nuts on top. You know, obviously meat is a luxury item, so in the traditional diet. So what we're doing, again, we're again very bored, so I can answer questions because we're waiting for this now for 10 minutes to form up a little bit, and then we're going to add an egg and some cheese, and then we're going to spread it out and create the crust of the polenta tart. So this is, by the way, a creation. Came to me. These things come to me when I sleep. I don't know how I had that idea, but it did come to me. And then it took a lot of trial and error to figure out the right amount and to get it there so that it firms up. Ask questions about this. Any questions?
What is the shelf life of the whole corn grain?
Indefinitely, as long as it's a good dry corn. And you'll find corn is probably one of the higher moisture grains. So the only thing you'll have a problem with is if it's a little moist, that it might mold. But you can visibly see it. But other than that, if it's good and dry, it will store forever.
And then what if you wanted to grind it better?
I'm going to tell you, I'll be real honest with you. I think corn is one of the most perishable after you grind it, because it's so funny. I'll never forget years ago, we make grits at our house for breakfast all the time, and my kids, one of my sons would literally scrape the pot, you know, to eat. Does anybody want any more grits? And he would eat the rest of the pot. And I was doing a seminar for 250 people. Well, I couldn't grind the grit, and I was serving grits for breakfast. I couldn't grind them that day, you know, so I had to grind them the day ahead. My son was with me, and he was little. He was, well, like 9, 10 years old. And he came in the kitchen and said, these grits are not as good as you make at home. One day. And I've noticed that. And it just loses its flavor. The nutrients begin to oxidize. If y'all have not heard my CD about the nutritional loss, just oxidizing from just grinding, and I've had people tell me that about wheat, that they take their, you know, we had a mill at church, they'd grind their grain there, go home, make muffins out of them, and 3 days later make muffins out of the flour. And she said, the muffins are not as good with the 3-day-old flour as they were with the 1-day-old flour. So, I mean, I have a grain mill. Of course, you know, that's what we teach. But grits are so easy. It's so easy to grind in a blender even. But corn, of all things, I would grind when you're ready to use it for sure. Yes.
Some of us are allergic to corn. What would you recommend to substitute for corn? Because that's been a real challenge.
Yeah, you could do, I mean, if you're not allergic to wheat, right? You could, you know, you make a porridge from wheat is absolutely delicious. You can use different. You know, you can do anything for breakfast. That's actually a great question. So what can you do for breakfast if you, or even like as a side dish? Some of the grains I want to inspire you to try is completely underrated is millet. I think it's a fantastic, very comforting, you know, bowl of millet. You can have it for breakfast. You know, if you simmer it with a little milk, you can put a cinnamon inside or lemon zest, whatever you want. And then you have a warming, especially in the winter months, it's really wonderful, a warming bowl of millet for breakfast. Or, of course, for dinner, you make the most simple of all side dishes. Millet cooks in 15, 20, 25 minutes, depending, you know, how fresh your grain is. That's always, it's always a little margin, you know, depending on how fresh your grain is, right? Oh, quinoa, if the quinoa would firm up like that?
I would say millet would be fabulous, or even ground kamut. Because when I make muffins out of kamut, a lot of people say they taste kind of like cornbread.
One more, teff.
Oh, yeah.
Teff will be the one that will be the closest to corn in terms of the ability to firm up like that. T-E-F-F. It's delicious. It's from Ethiopia, like that's where it's traditionally still eaten. It's a relative of millet. It's the tiniest seed, tiniest of all grains. Teff actually in Amharic, in the local dialect, means lost. Why is it called lost? Because when you thresh it, you lose it. So don't even try to rinse teff. you'll lose it. So this you really have to just cook and eat. It's absolutely fantastic. In Boston, I've been working with one chef that I admire who is working with local grains, and we can talk about that as well, because local freshly milled grains and locally grown grains are the next big trend in America, I think. And so the chef Jason Bond from Bon Dia Restaurant, it's a highly acclaimed restaurant. He makes teff polenta. It is tangy sweet. It's absolutely mesmerizing. And then when he has leftovers, he's a good chef. He makes polenta triangles from teff and, sautés them a little bit of butter, or you can bake them in the oven and you can whatever, you sprinkle them just like a corn or a polenta. Absolutely fabulous. I mean, very delicious. No, teff, we want to give that back around maybe for people to look at. Look how small it is. It's the whole kernel. You just use it as it is, So, so let's put 1 egg and the cheese. Is that the measured cheese and 1 egg and pepper, right? We need is this pepper? No, this is salt. This is pepper?
Yes.
Yeah. We're going to eyeball this right now here. We haven't measured a pepper, but that's okay. This is just salt.
Cheese.
Okay. Extra salt. Okay. Yeah, I think we have a little 3/4 cup, right? What do we
I
have
think it's
here?
a half a cup.
Oh yeah, half a cup. So that should be enough. Oh, that's for the top. Okay. Oh,
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. We're sorry.
We're just in our own little old world here.
We just like each other. Pepper, half a cup of Parmesan, and 1 egg for binding. So, got it? So you see it? Can you see it? How do you see it?
Yep.
Oh, there.
We got you.
Yeah, I know you got me. I trust you, so I didn't even check on it. So you see, now we want this to melt in. See how the cheese starts to melt? And especially the egg. And the reason why we're waiting is that the polenta cools off a bit, because if you put the egg right away, it'll cook. Here, what the egg will do, it'll just firm up our polenta, and that's what we want. So, see now how the cheese is melting in, which of course makes it really tasty. Yeah, it smells really good. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it smells even better when it's freshly ground. There's no question about that. Okay. So now we need a glass of water. Okay. So now what we're going to do, I'll show you how to do this, how to get this into a nice crust. So hold on.
Will this fit
Yeah,
your
that's
spoon? We just used a bowl yesterday.
That's great. That's good. So this is really difficult. You'll see.
We have these. We just got these lovely tart pans, and she slightly oiled it with just a little smear of olive oil there.
So now, first you just dump it in. So you can already tell that it's a bit firmer. And again, the only thing we're going to do is we're going to wait. First, we're going to spread it out. And now I'm having a cold glass of water. Why do I have a cold glass of water? Because it might resist a little bit. So what I'm doing here, well, these are very nice tart pans. I like them, good size also. So, spoon. That'll help me. There's two-step process. Again, it's super easy. The only thing is you just need to wait in between. So I'm spreading this out a little bit and creating a rim, but it's a very casual rim because right now the polenta is not firm enough for me to actually do something proper with it. So what I'm trying right now is just to even it out.
Those of you that have switchets, we sell these. I love these. I absolutely love them.
Do you want me to use one?
It doesn't matter. We just found that
I take my own spoon.
She takes
from
her
home.
own. See, I take these. These went to Latvia with me.
I'm afraid that people won't have my wooden spoons.
So. Well, these work very well because the silicone's a little non-stick, and it also worked very well to just spread that out. I mean, we still had to dip it in the water.
You still had to dip it, right? So
yeah,
let me
just
try it. Why don't I try it?
Yeah, try it. See if you like it.
Oh, yeah, it's nice. Great. Maybe my wooden spoon will get tossed out. I already walked through the store with big eyes regretting that the store is not in Boston because I would live here. I mean, I love, they have beautiful things, So that's all you do. I mean, you're just trying to get it. You know, you see my rim is really not pretty right now. And it doesn't matter. We'll use our hands for the next step. But now, 10 minutes of waiting, or we make quinoa.
Okay.
Right? Because then, actually, yeah, so we can see. If there's questions, we'll talk. And we'll make the quinoa afterwards. Or, is there any questions right now?
Would you prefer to let it cool and then?
No. If you let it cool now, you will not be able to spread it properly. It'll become one hard mass. Oops.
Yeah, I think the two of us together.
Oh, I see. Okay. So I do it in these two steps, right? Because it's almost there, and then in the end, I'm just going to make the rim here. You know, so if you wait too long, it might just get too firm overall. You know, so but maybe you figured something out. Try it. No, I mean, see, that's the thing about cooking. We all figure out amazing things, right? This is.
Things like a Puerto Rican dish.
Yeah. Yeah.
German or.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know, we let it cool
Yeah.
a little bit in the fridge, just a little bit, so that we can handle it.
Okay, so you know, this is what I figured out. This is my own. So if I had a Puerto Rican mom, I would have been maybe way ahead of the curve, and then we'll have I mean, I would love that. So I'm gonna try it, or if you're gonna do it, try it. Tell me, time it, and we'll put it out. We'll put it on the Facebook. No, it's great. I mean, or in the next edition of the book. I mean, these things always anyone that cooks knows that, right? Like I have an Indian mother-in-law. She does things totally different than we do in Europe. The outcome is going to be the same, and it continues to amaze me how people all across the globe do very similar things in very different way and have a very same outcome. I find that fascinating. I learn all the time. I learn more from you probably today than you learn from me. So thank you. It's a great idea.
A lot of your recipes are using olive oil,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to read a study on that much of the olive oil there is not really 100% olive oil. Could you actually direct us to a product that actually is?
The one we sell. I can guarantee the one we sell, it comes from Greece. We went through this whole ordeal several years ago. We were selling a label, cold pressed extra virgin olive oil. We had it tested. There was less than 1% olive oil in it. Very, very crooked industry. I hate to say that, but what you want to look for, if you can't get here all the time, is you want to look for one that is bottled outside of the country. If it's brought in already bottled, then there's a little bit more testing and they can test it to see. The problem comes with ones that are bottled here. Barrels come in, the extra virgin olive oil is tested, okay, this is extra virgin olive, it goes to the plant. No one follows to see what comes out of the plant in that bottle that's labeled extra virgin olive oil. But the one, I promise you, the one we have, our supplier is Greek. He knows the island, where it is and where it's produced. I can tell you it is extra virgin olive oil. It's a very delicious olive oil, not real strong, but a nice, like she said, these fragrances that it brings. Excellent for cook. I cook everything with olive oil. I mean, I use some coconut oil and some butter too, but cakes and the granola, I mean, I just find that it's absolutely delicious. So our extra virgin olive oil is the real deal.
What is your take on grapeseed oil? Because I've seen that a lot. Like, is it grapeseed oil even better?
I think it has a higher smoke point, right? Isn't that
I
why
think
some people are using it for frying now? I think that's why it comes in, But for example, in Greece, I mean, we use olive oil also for deep frying. And there is some experts that the whole thing about this, because, I mean, Greeks obviously have done this forever.
Yes.
And I don't see, that we would all, have only toxins as a result in our, deep fried calamari or something. So I think there's a lot of murkiness out there. There's a lot of ignorance still. So I think there's a lot we don't know yet. Some people, swear by these smoke points. I have always, I rarely deep fry, but when I do, I deep fry in olive oil because that's what we do. And I think it tastes also so good because if you do it right, again, I mean, you obviously don't want to have your oil, smoke up. And something you have to really watch it and do it right. The other thing that I want to add something to olive oil. The best thing with olive oil you can do is train your palate. We have, for example, in Boston now 2 stores that have devoted themselves to introducing to people to different kinds of olive oil. Olives are grown in Australia, in Greece, in Italy, obviously, and many other parts of the world now because they've become extremely popular for their health benefits. It's worth tasting. You will actually learn to find out what a good olive oil is by tasting. It's really true, you know, so that it has nothing to do with what you get on a normal supermarket shelf. That will taste pretty close to canola oil, even if it says olive oil. And that is exactly what she was talking about. It's really, I mean, if you've had in Greece, the bottles are even labeled with the acidity level of olive oil. That's something that's really important. And so, you know, these are, but I think use your palate and train it, because what all we are learning now, the same with coffee, with all of these wonderful products, I have to learn a lot all the time. I mean, think about how our chocolate taste has changed in the past 10 years. I mean, we used to eat, you know, milk chocolate with who knows what was in there. I don't even want to know. And now, you know, we're having 70% this, and we have, you know, from one certain area, we can taste the beans, the cocoa beans from that area and from that area. And it's true. If you put your mind to it and really eat and enjoy and taste. And that's what I want to encourage all of you, because also with the freshness, I want to pick up on the freshness of flour. When I wrote the book, I had to work with store-bought flours, obviously, because you know, I can't tell every American to buy a grain mill. I have a grain mill, and I love it, and it's immensely tasty, and we're working on that. In Boston, I'm working now with a local farm. It's the only major grain grower now for 4-star farms in Boston. That it's actually in Northfield, Massachusetts. And so I'm introducing them to chefs. They're milling the flour for the chefs now, and the chefs are using freshly milled flour. Yay. And so it's like huge change, right? But you know, I couldn't write a book like this because it would be a book that would be sitting in the bookstore in the last niche. I wanted to introduce people to it, and once they taste it, you know, what is freshly milled flour versus store-bought, then you will change if you eat it a lot. But again, we have to do so much. I feel like so much people first have to learn how these grains, people think grains are blah and they all taste the same. Every grain tastes different. Have you eaten whole rye berries? Oh, they're delicious. They have a tanginess that's absolutely divine. Have you eaten bulgur? A rich nuttiness, but it's mild. It's really appealing. I mean, for children, it's a great introduction grain. Millet, very mild, very versatile. Buckwheat, I didn't bring buckwheat today. Buckwheat also cooks up in 15 to 20 minutes. I mean, it's a perfect fast food here too. Has a, you know, there's 2 kinds of buckwheat. Are you familiar? You've probably seen kasha, many of you, right? Which is what you get most easily, which is toasted buckwheat. Now, some detect a hint of cocoa in it. Try also the mild, simple, untoasted buckwheat. It's called groats. I don't know why they call a grain a groat. I don't like the term of it. I call my grains usually, you know, wheat berries or something. I want them also to, they have a real image problem, so we're working on that. But so if you get mild buckwheat, I think it's really wonderful. Very appealing. I make some burgers in the book here on, let me see if I can find them quickly. There's a whole chapter where I make grain burgers. 130, thank you, yeah. Buckwheat feta burgers with tangy parsley sauce. So, I mean, those, put them out on a party buffet. You know, don't tell people, you know, it's meatless or vegetarian. Just tell them try them, because if they would go to Turkey or Greece, I mean, you know, they might. Grains were traditionally used. The leftover grains were traditionally made into cakes or burgers or patties or whatever you want to call them. That's how homemakers used up leftover grains. They created a delicious next day meal. And that's actually also the way to make them, because they hold up much better, because when grain cools off, the starches harden. And that's what helps you the next day. You know, the Italians have the small rice balls that they make from you know, they put cheese inside, and then the melted cheese comes out, and they deep fry them, of course, which makes them especially tasty. And these here, I have, you know, a stovetop method, like my Greek grandmother, just saute them in a little bit of olive oil or fry them. But you can also I have also a method how to bake them if you wanna, you know, if you wanna do avoid that step. So, perfect. Let me just wash my hands, and then hold on. I just want to wash my hands quickly, and I want to show them the
Yep, I'll move that.
making. Yeah, that's fine. So, done. Thank you. So now I'm going to show you how hard it is to make the rim.
Here's the towel.
Thank you. So usually I use my hands again. I do this now. I give it a little more, you know, just to be certain. But see how firm it has become? So it would be harder now to spread it out and everything. So I don't know. I'd be happy to try it, you know. So initially what I'm doing is I'm just building, you know, a little rim here. And now you see how nice it firms up. No problem. So I'm doing this first. Do we still have the water cup? Here, right? Yeah. Thank you. So I dip my fingers in the water when it gets a little, because it helps. And now you'll see also, I will never do it twice the same way, because it doesn't really matter. Do it how you like it. It really doesn't matter. All I'm trying right now is the first step, and that's all you can do. You know, I'm just trying to create an even, see, I go around here, make sure the bottom is nice and even, because you want everyone to have a slice that is, so let me do that. And so now what you can do if you like, but you know, this is really, so let me see it. What I'm doing now is I use my thumb, and I really do what you do when you make an American pie during the holidays. I make a small indentation here because it looks pretty. But this is something, you know, to play with. This is not something you have to do. So this is just something. So let's see. Yeah, this is a bit coarse, you know, so it depends always. There we go. Now we're getting there. I go just around a couple times exactly. Now we're getting there. So that wouldn't work if the polenta is, you know, too soft. You can only do this once it's ready. How does this look? Good. How hard was that? And that's your crust. So there's no work involved. As I said, it's immensely impressive if you take it to a party. And if you have time, we'll finish it off. But otherwise, we'll make the next dish right now, because time always flies and I talk way too much and I want you to ask me questions. So we're going to basically, what this is, you fill it. And if you have time, we'll do that. You put your artichokes inside, sprinkle a little bit of goat cheese, and then you make a very simple Greek yogurt, eggs, fresh spring onions, rosemary, a lot of pepper. I like, you know, for flavor. When you bake things, you can always add more flavor. That's something I learned from my mom. You know, so when you put a little bit of pepper on the stove, if you bake the same thing, you can be more generous with the pepper. It'll go away. So you don't be too concerned, right? Like quarter teaspoon or something. Just eyeball it. I mean, I write in the book how much to use.
I was even wondering, do you think you could do like some sauteed spinach instead of the artichokes and the goat cheese?
You can do what you want. I mean, that is, see, I did this because this came to me. I had this idea to make an artichoke rosemary tart. I don't know why, right? But this is what, at some point, it just came together, and I loved the idea. Mm-hmm. You can do anything. I mean, you could fill this in the summer. You could fill it even with tomatoes, for example, right? Like if you fill it with tomatoes, you can make the custard with Greek yogurt, right? Like, and pour it over and then put some Parmesan on top is what we're doing today. But this is really something, it's up to you. What you have in spinach is great, great. You can do anything. I mean, you could do chard, you can do other greens. In Greece, we use a lot of wild growing herbs and greens. Even, what's it called, Löwenzahn of English? The dandelion, thank you. So, you know, you could do anything. I mean, in Greece, really, my mom, I've written about this in the book. So my mom, there's one, I have to tell that story, and then I'll cook.
No.
So one day we were at the beach, and my husband and I, and she said she's coming to visit, and she's bringing dinner. And I said, okay, Mom, what should I have? Oh, if you have pasta. I said, I have pasta. And then she came and she had nothing on her. I mean, she literally had her swimsuit and she had like this little bag, and I'm like, where's the dinner? Well, she had brought from her own yard. She chopped off, I don't know, might have been rosemary, might have been fresh mint, might have been anything. She found some at the side of the road in Greece. I mean, all of this stuff, oregano grows wild everywhere, right? So she had a bundle of fresh herbs, but these are herbs that are fresh, they're dried, they're full of etheric oils. And so what we ended up doing, we made a whole wheat pasta, which she had. We put all these herbs, olive oil, garlic, and then we just a little bit of Parmesan type, a Greek type Parmesan cheese. I mean, it was the most aromatic pasta I've ever had. Obviously, I can never recreate it because I have no idea what she did. She had this bundle of herbs in her pocket. But that's, I mean, what cooking, that's how I learned to cook. So, you know, and that was really hard for me to write this book because you're not allowed to do this in a cookbook, right? To say, just throw them in. But it works. It doesn't matter. Your creativity, anything. I mean, this is a bed for anything, you know, that you can do. So, any questions? You had a question here. You had a question.
I wanted to know what the, you told us what the toasted, what you like about the roast.
Oh, the plain has a very mild. See, I often tell people because they say, but I don't like kasha. Well, kasha is very aromatic, right? And people want something sometimes mild. It has a very mild, you know, it's hard to say, call it earthiness. You know, with grains, we have two terms, nuttiness and earthiness. In the book, I've tried to expand on that, but it's really, it has, it's even, you know, I wouldn't call it grassy because quinoa is more grassy, and amaranth also. Amaranth has this peppery grassiness, you know. So buckwheat I find just amazingly mild. I like the mildness that is really, it lends itself to whatever you want to add to it, which is really wonderful, you know.
It has a tartness too sometimes when you grind it into
yeah,
flour.
oh, when you grind it, it's different in the flour.
I know the one we sell is very mild in flavor.
That's why I like it, you know, so you can give it again. What I do with grains, for example, I have a dish here, a farro breakfast. It's a creamy farro with honey roasted grapes. It's on page, one second, here it is.
This is buckwheat that Brad is passing around.
Oh, great, you have the plain one, right? Let me find the...
We have all the grains in her cookbook. I don't know of any that we don't
No,
have.
I'm sure you have them all.
Well,
One
what did you
second.
say, farro?
The
Explain
farro,
it
the
more.
creamy farro with the honey roast. Here it is, here it is. It's page 45. There I cook the whole grain. I cook the farro with anise seeds and a cinnamon stick because it infuses with flavor. You can do that also with millet. If you have a mild grain, you can infuse it with whatever you want. I put a laurel leaf into my grains sometimes. I put the chili peppers into, like the whole red chili peppers. I put whole peppercorns inside. So it's really something that will infuse your grains. Now I see you're eating, so.
They're eating the tart.
Good. Tell me what you think. Some of them haven't had it yet.
Yeah, I wanted to show you something. I'm not, I hate to say this, next to Maria, I'm not a fan of goat cheese. I just can't do it. Most of it has that, I call it a Barney taste afterwards, and I just can't do it. But so I bought this goat cheese at the store because I had forgotten that we carried it, and I took one bite and I was like, there is no way I can cook with this, no way. And so I went out and got ours, and it's not as soft as some goat cheese because it actually will grate. This is the goat cheese we sell. Very nice. I actually took several bites of it, but that's in the tart. So, I mean, you could certainly use another soft cheese. I mean, I even think
you can use
feta
cream
would be
cheese,
fine, or
cream cheese you
cheese.
can use, no problem. But I encourage you, I mean, you see it when you eat it. You know, it's very mild because it's combined in the right way. It just has a little bit of goat cheese, which adds
It's only
you
2
know,
ounces,
so-
which is
exactly.
only a quarter
So-
of this block. So,
and so all the recipes in the book, I'm introducing, you know, my editor said, oh, but you can't use anchovies, and don't use them in the headline, and so on and so on, because people won't touch them. And I said, well, you know, I can talk about it, I explain what it's doing, and actually things are changing. People are better understanding what these ingredients do. For example, anchovies melts into your, they completely melt when you use them. They add like a rich umami depth to a dish. You will never know it. I use it like even in a fresh tomato pasta in the summer. I add a little bit of anchovy and really make it really small, and it adds depth to the dish. That's what people have done through the centuries. I mean, the Romans had their fish sauce very famously. Asians have their fish sauce. And the anchovy in the Mediterranean tradition is exactly the same thing. It's a fish that's been salted for conservation, but it adds an incredible, so you're not supposed to eat, I mean, you obviously, I love it, so I eat it like that also. But I use it here for flavor. A lot of the ingredients, also someone said in one very well-known blogger actually from Kitchen Therapy. I don't know if you know Kitchen Therapy. It's a beautiful website that does a lot of great recipes. And she wrote about one dish that I have here, that's the 196, that's the purple rice pudding with rosewater dates. And she said she doesn't like rosewater, but she had to say that it was used just right. And I'm like, thank you, because obviously you're very concerned what people say, right? And so she felt like it was just the right amount to give the, to really enhance. I soak the dates in rosewater. And this is something in Turkey. As a kid, we traveled a lot to Turkey. My father was a Byzantine historian, and I was bored to death on excavation sites. And all I was thinking about was food, which was dinner, and which was very good in Turkey. And the first time I had rosewater as a kid, I was like, yikes. And then I went right back to it, because that's what rosewater, it's such an intense, aroma, and it's kind of appalling, and you want to still have it. So it has that, and obviously once you know it, it's different, right? But so again, I'm using these ingredients because they really add something very much in the Mediterranean tradition. The whole book is written in the Mediterranean tradition, except for the couple German recipes that I snuck in.
Do you make rosewater or do you buy it?
No, I buy rosewater. To make it, you would need a lot of rose petals, and obviously you want to buy from a good source so that the roses have not been treated. So it has to be rosewater to eat, right? Because you don't want. I do.
Do you get it up there?
Yes. Where do I get the rosewater? Christina's. Christina's is a good source that we have for spices. Penzies online is also. PEN, it's all in the book. It's all in the book. All the sources that I'm talking about today are in the book. And if I had known about them before, I would have included them in the book too.
Second
So we
printing.
have to, exactly, second printing. Exactly. Oh, you do?
Okay, they're saying we have a
okay.
Penzies here in Atlanta in Sandy Springs, where you can get some of these spices and things.
So what do you think about the artichoke tart? Yeah? Would you have thought about it to make it like this? Good, good, good. I'm glad. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Any questions about it?
I can't wait to try it with a good fresh garden tomato. I just think that, ooh, wow. And maybe, and spinach
is
and
also
some
classic.
basil.
Yeah.
Basil with the. You want to
So,
scoot this
yeah,
over
sure.
a little bit?
Yeah. This is, I'm wondering, this is not deep enough.
Is it
Maybe
not
if
deep
it's
enough? You want a pot? Okay.
No, I think three
Yeah.
cups. Yeah, I think we're better off. Exactly. Since
Yeah.
we're making a large amount.
Here, I'll take that.
Yeah, yeah. That's fine. Is it plugged in?
Yes, ma'am.
How high does this go?
To 9.
Okay, so let's do medium. Would be 5.
It's sometimes just very touchy.
Okay. Yeah. Great. And the olive oil. And we want to zest the lemons. You might have to give me a hand with the zesting if I talk too much. Okay.
that's okay.
I'm just saying.
I'll help you with whatever.
No,
you
no,
need.
I'm saying this is just what's going to happen. So we need the
Yeah, because that's the only-
water and the broth. We need it measured 3 times.
Oh,
How
I'm
much
sorry.
do we need?
How much on the broth? Is it vegetable?
Here we go. We need, no, we actually use water. We need 5 cups of water.
Okay. Do you want to
Total.
use some broth too?
No,
or-
it's fine. I would prefer this one to do it, to have the flavor.
Okay.
Okay. So, let's see here, olive oil. Quarter cup. Tablespoon. Okay.
5 cups in the pot.
That's great. Not yet. Hold
Oh.
on. No, not yet. And 3 cups of quinoa. Where do we have those?
Yep.
Great. And they're rinsed. Perfect. So, moving on to the next dish. Any questions right now? Good. So we're making now lemon quinoa with currants, dill, and zucchini. Very much, again, inspired by the flavors of the Mediterranean. Quinoa is a very new grain for me, obviously, because it's become very popular. It's become so popular because it has all the amino acids, but we were talking, and so it's a complete protein, but we were talking earlier about that. Today, we don't need to be concerned about that. I mean, except if we live a very, rigid, lifestyle where we don't eat much in the first place, or maybe if you're a vegan. But other than that, we do get enough nutrients. So I think quinoa is a great grain to use. Obviously, it's another one of the quick cooking grains. This is going to be what we're cooking now. A beautiful, you can make this in the year round. Beautiful one when you have too much zucchini, obviously in the summer. That's how I came up with that idea. And page 90, thank you. And it's a mixture between a soothing pilaf, a rice pilaf, and a refreshing salad. So it's right in between. It's great with sauteed salmon, with a chicken breast. It's extremely versatile. You can, when you have a barbecue in the summer or something, it's a great dish to bring. Why do I heat my pot without the oil? Do we all know that? The oil will basically, why do I heat my pot first? Always when you cook. I mean, there's like these very simple things. How do I tell if it's ready? Just with my hand. I wait. Now, because this is not my pot, because it's not my kitchen, we had like all kinds of things happen. So I am assuming, it's almost there. So, but at home, basically, I have a good sense when my pot is right, nice and hot, because when you add the olive oil then, I need 3. Yeah, that's good. When you add the olive oil, then it'll slide across the bottom. Yeah, I need a bit more. I'm gonna open it. You'll slide across, yes, and then it's getting hot. I can smell it. And then we have, so let's see, put a bit more. I taste, this is something you just don't want it to smoke. And now let's pray that it's not smoking when we put it, because as I said, I don't know. See how nice it glides across, that's it. And it's practically ready. You leave it another 30 seconds. You don't want it to smoke. That's the thing, right? So it's just before, that's perfect. And see how nice, and you can see actually ridges. I don't know if you can see the ridges. That's when it's ready, see? So it worked, but it's really, you have to, with a fork, I know my own pots, you have to be, my hand, it can get pretty hot, but try it. You might once or twice not succeed, then you start over, because you don't want to eat the oil when it smokes. You don't want that, So what we're doing here is, my Greek mom, she uses all the spring onions. She doesn't just use the white part, which is slightly sweeter. She uses the whole fresh spring onion. Tastes wonderful. It's very rustic. So, and you have to stir a lot because we don't want these to brown. We also will add, sorry, I'm a bit late for that. We're adding a bit of salt. Why do we add salt? Whenever we cook an onion, a regular golden onion, these onions, why? It sweetens. It draws out the sugars. So, the water, so the onion will be sweeter. So a little pinch, it can be just a pinch, but it really makes a difference. I tested it because I never believe anything until I test it myself. It really, if you do it side by side, it makes the onion sweeter. Now, so only about 2 minutes. You don't want them to brown. Then they taste bitter, the green parts, and so you don't want that here. So now, quinoa. We'll talk about rinsing or not quinoa, but first I'll add it, and we'll talk about it if it's necessary or not.
She's tripling this recipe, so this is a
so
lot
we're
more
making
than
a huge pot for all of us here. This is not what's exact. Just throw it in. Just throw it all in. Say again? Yeah, this is the quinoa that's been rinsed. And what we're doing now is, so we have the water here, right? Okay, 5.
That's
This
4,
is
and I'll
4,
get you another.
okay. We might need a bit more than 5, so
Okay.
5 1/4.
okay.
And now what I'm doing is this is all over medium heat. First, I make sure that it's all nicely so. Now what I'm doing is I'm leaving it because in this recipe, I'm toasting the grains. Now, why do I toast the grains? It brings out aroma. Do I do it all the time? No. I do it when I like it because when you toast the grain, it tastes different. Some people swear by toasting millet. I like the millet, very simple. I like the mildness of it. If you like it, toast it. So you can toast grains even without anything. You can just put them in the pot, toast them. You just watch them, medium heat, not high heat, and stir well, you know, because they will burn very quickly. So you have to catch the right moment, adding the water. And so you can toast them. It brings out flavor. It's really nice. And can you hear it crackle? We want to stir it. We don't want to burn them. But basically, all I'm saying is, here in this step, you do want to toast them. So you don't stir as often. You just stir occasionally. And I leave this for about 3 minutes. And how do I know? I smell it. So I cook with my nose over the stove. In the book, I've written an essay about it. I actually never taste my food. All my life, I only smell and I know what's missing. The only thing I can't tell is salt. However, I was told by an Indian chef, he can tell if salt is in there, if the right amount of salt by smelling. I can't. So I can tell anything else. I can tell you more cumin, more this, more paprika, more wine, more tomatoes. I can smell it all, but I can't smell the salt. So I have to learn still. So he told me he can smell it. So I was really impressed by that. But so what I'm telling you is here, smell it because you don't want it to burn, right? But it becomes nicely and fragrant. And you can see now it's also drying out. And it starts to steam. That's also a sign that we're basically there. Could you see the steam coming up? That's another sign. That works really good in this large amount. In a smaller amount in your kitchen, I never see it. And I had a chef tell me the trick to watch for the steam. So that's a sign that we're practically there. So we can add the water. Yeah, see it's nice dried out? Yeah, and now it starts to smell. I'll leave it for another minute. Yeah. It would be good to put the pot onto the flame and not next to the flame, wouldn't it? Any question about that right now? So here's the water. This is also the water, right? Yeah. And here's the currants. Yeah, nice. Now we're getting there. That's it. So now I'm adding the water. Now it's going to I'm sure you know. So when you make a large amount, you step back a little. And a bit more. Now we're going to turn this up. Okay, let's try that. I'm adding currants. Of course, I'm Greek, so I have to add currants. Tastes really good in this recipe. And we need to add salt here, right? Yeah. Let's add, how much do we add here? Because we didn't measure that now. Did we add any salt so far?
You just a little over the
yeah,
onion.
Just I don't think we have anything else. So we need, if we make 3 times, we need 3/4 cup. 1.5. Let's do 1 1/4.
You sprinkle it in?
Yeah. Okay, great. Good. Beautiful. So, bring to a boil. It's already there. Great pot again. Great pot, great plate. You know, these things really help. And then we lower it to low. Now, in your kitchen, you know, I don't want to say low. I usually say in the book, to maintain a simmer, because every stove is slightly different, and so sometimes when I put mine on low, it doesn't simmer properly. So you want, you know, a gentle simmer, just a little bit. Yes, let's wait a minute and see. 15 minutes, 20 minutes until the water is absorbed. In that time, you can really make dinner. I mean, you wait for this, and you make your vegetables or your And the only other step I have, you zest a lemon and get some lemon juice, right? And so today I learned that
I started doing
great.
it.
Oh,
so-
great. Oh, fantastic. Oh, cool. I use a microplane, but she told me this one is much better. So I do want to try it at least once. So do we have enough already?
Oh, no,
have
we
enough?
need more.
Well, let's make some more.
There you
So,
go.
Great.
Whoops, I don't have this on.
Yeah. Oh, so you actually store it in there?
You can.
Oh, cool.
And the nice thing is it's graduated. So if you really
Yeah.
measure your zest, I
Oh.
don't know who measures zest. I don't. I just
Yeah.
feel like the more the
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
it's like always one whole lemon
Yeah,
or one
no,
whole
it's
orange.
true. It's
I do want to say something about cooking quinoa in a pressure cooker. How many of y'all have pressure cookers? Quinoa cooks in 1 minute in the pressure cooker. So you just turn this dish, instead of having to wait 20, you could literally have this on the table in 10 or 15 minutes, start to finish.
But if you don't, you just make dinner, right? So, I mean, that's the thing, right? Because it's unlikely that you're just going to eat that. You know, probably your family will want, you know, something with it. You can. Today we're going to have it sprinkled with a little bit of feta, and that's all. In the summer, it's a wonderful light meal, you know, so it's a complete, I mean, there's everything there. I have also an Italian version where I make it with basil and pine nuts. This one is with sesame and dill. That's the Greek tradition. So the Italian version is in the book, and there we sprinkle it with ricotta salata. Have you had ricotta salata? It's worth, if you have like an Italian grocer, you know, it's basically like a hard cheese, harder than feta, kind of dry, also mild. It's not stinky at all. And it's beautiful. It goes really well. So
Drain that and crumble it into a ball.
what do you think? Great. Very nice. I like that it has that little storage. Then you don't have it all over your counter.
The same,
How
Easy
much
Pro
do
is
we
the
need
same
to-
company that makes the box grater that I was telling you about. The difference in this and most graters is that it's actually sharpened. The points are sharpened. It's not just pressed where you have the metal sticking out. Most things are that way. It's just stamped out and then you know, but these are actually sharpened. And then I don't know if you can see the lines. They're etched so that the food really, whatever you're grating, slides very, very easily. So it's very, very nice box grater, and the same with the zester.
Okay, we need more juice still. Maybe
Okay.
we can do
Mhm.
that.
I will.
So, one thing that I get often asked is, do you rinse your quinoa? No, I don't. Do you rinse your grains? No, I don't. Now, why? If your grain is really dirty and if it makes you feel good, absolutely rinse your grains. Today's grains are so clean. How they do it, I have no idea because they're still grown in the soil, so I don't know. But whatever comes into my kitchen in these either packages or fresh from bulk sections is very clean. I don't know what your experience is. It's really dirty like it used to be when I, you know, in the 80s when I used to eat a lot of grains in Germany. I mean, grains are full of sand, they were dusty. Sure, you want to rinse them. Otherwise, don't bother. I did a side-by-side test when people, you know, some Greek recipes, some Middle Eastern recipes. If you don't rinse the bulgur, it will not be right in this dish. So I cooked it with rinsing and without rinsing. I couldn't tell a difference. I mean, that's the thing, right? Sometimes we do things, we do things forever in a certain way without ever questioning them. And that's actually something I like about the magazine Cooks Illustrated. They also question everything. And I've learned a lot from them. Not everything they do I agree with, but I like that they question everything, because sometimes we do things and we don't really know why we do them in a certain way. And of course, in the old days, yes, grains had to be rinsed. Today, when they come so clean, I just cook them. Now, quinoa does have, the outer skin has a saponin layer. Saponin is soap. Like the word soap is connected to saponin. It's a bitter taste, right? And so traditionally women have washed quinoa many times over to get rid of this bitter taste. What it does is the saponin layer, it protects from bugs. So it's actually a great grain which can be grown for that reason organically quite well, because you don't need pesticide, because it has a natural protective layer which bugs don't like. Now, our quinoa in the US is what they call pre-washed, and pretty much all of it. I have yet to find a company that is not pre-washed. What they do is they don't wash it 100 times, like or 100 is some number I made up, but what was traditional. They shave off a tiny bit of this outer bran layer. So yes, a little less nutrients, but it is still, you know, a very nutritious grain. And so there's no reason. I call the companies that make quinoa and I say, why do you tell people to rinse it 100, like, you know, very well rinsed on the package when you call it well, so my book went through a legal department. If it says on the package, well rinsed, that's what I put. You don't need to rinse quinoa. So, I mean, these are the, you know, as a food writer, I had most of the time it was a giant headache writing this book because I had to figure out all these kind of complexities that a home cook doesn't even need to think about, and I had no idea. So, any question about rinsing quinoa? Okay. So, and again, right, like, see, now we have a nice, it's a little bit too high, but this is, so now I can lower it. Did you see? So this is just, you know, let me stir it one more time. It didn't cook up properly, so. Look how pretty it looks. I love how grains look. I think they also look so pretty. Let's see. So rinsing grains. So we talked about rinsing grains. How about storing grains? Many times in the US, you will read to store grains in the fridge. I think it's immensely impractical. My fridge is full.
There's no way.
I have, you know, vegetables in my fridge, cheese, meat, whatever, you know, because that really needs to be in the fridge. But my grains don't need to be in the fridge. What they should have is a cool, dark place. Now, if you only have a sunny kitchen and your house is 100 degrees in the south, then you have, I mean, you would probably be better off putting them in there. But most of our homes now are air conditioned. I have my grains in the basement. However, only the grains of which I have large quantities, you know, that I know they will be there for some months because they can be stored no problem. Other grains, the quick cooking grains, my millet, my quinoa, my bulgur, a lot of it, oh, it's everything. I have a shelf in the kitchen. You can see it on the internet. Someone came to my house and took a picture. So I have a beautiful shelf. I saw this in Germany. It's not my invention. I have all these mason jars, very cheap, very economical. Each grain is in its mason jar. I come home. I'm hungry. I look what I have, and I cook it. That's what you want. You want your grains to be accessible. You don't want to fiddle with bags. If you have your bags in the cupboard and you have a problem, they will eat through all, and you know what I mean by saying problem. I'm sure in the South people know this much better. They will eat through all your bags. So store your grains separately in jars. The great thing about this is if you do have a problem, you see it. So you discard the content of one jar and you're done, right? So you never need to worry. I had someone on the internet, she wrote, oh my God, my whole pantry, I don't know what to do. I don't know, it's everywhere. Well, that's why you store them like that. And I've learned that in Germany. I mean, it's such a simple thing, and it's really economical. I mean, mason jars are very cheap, right? They're not expensive. In your canning season, 12 jars, I think, are $15 or something. So it's a great way. Why I love it, it's practical, but also you see what you have, right? You want to see what you have in your kitchen because it's the only way for you to eat them. I mean, it's like when you open your fridge and you see, oh, I have leeks. I'm eating leeks tonight. Or I have, you know, but if there is somewhere, you know, and you have to paper bags in the back of your fridge or something, I wouldn't eat them. Even I wouldn't eat them because if I have to dig them out. So that is something that I do. Now, larger amounts storage should be a cool, dry place. You guys have this.
We sell them like this. They stack. You can see them stacked over there. Of course, their bigger grains are in the buckets. But I love the pails. Of course, it's if you have a place to make it pretty. I have a shelf in my dining area with jars with my grains that I use all the time. My window seat, I have bigger jars that I use. Those are the ones I use even more. But then in my basement, I will have my pails and my buckets. And these are just so nice because the bugs can't get in them. They stack very well. They close nicely so you can go in and out of them. So this is how we sell. Those of you who've never been here, we sell our grains in 2-pound bags, you know, but like she was saying, I would go home and put them in a jar if you're going to buy 2 pounds. But this will hold, most grains, this will hold 7 pounds. And then, of course, our big buckets, it's around 40 to 45 pounds. So this is great.
But it's the same principle, essentially, right? Because grains, I mean, when we think of grains, they don't need, I mean, grains are extremely hardy. You know, grains don't go bad overnight. People keep asking me these questions. Yeah, but they have, you know, and we'll talk about actually what is a whole grain. We need to talk about that too. So, but people ask always, and they go rancid, and so, no, they don't. I mean, they last many months. I mean, people have in, you know, even years. I mean, obviously, right? But you want fresh grains, you know, so it's just like you want fresh dried beans because they taste better. So, but it's not like they go bad like a piece of meat or something, or your milk. If you leave it outside on a 100-degree day, it's gone. I mean, your grain will not be kaput, you know, so that's really important to me. Now, any questions about that, about storing grains? Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. Yeah, you have to tell me. I mean, please challenge me here. No, I do want to, you know, and as I said, I never stop learning things. So storing grains, and what did I say we had? Oh, yeah. What is a whole grain? Most important question. I should have started the day like that. You would think by all the experts telling you to eat them, you would know it. Well, that's the problem. When we beat information into our heads, we kind of shut off. So a whole grain is literally what it says. A kernel of grain is typically, let's watch this here 1 second. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So typically an outer inedible husk is removed. And then you have 3 parts of the grain that are left. The bran layer, all around, has a lot of fiber. Then there's a little part at the bottom. That's where it germinates when you plant it in the soil. That's the germ. Has a lot of natural oils, which is, you know, the part that can also go faster bad than when you have not a whole grain. Then you have a starchy endosperm in the center. That's the starchy center. It's called endosperm. Now, when we process grains, as in, you know, all-purpose flour, white pasta, white rice, the bran is removed and the germ is removed. Why did we do that? Say again? It lasts longer, exactly. At some point during industrialization, basically millers figured out that their flour and their rice and all of this can last much longer because we didn't have, you know, air conditioning homes. We didn't, you know, have in homes, in stores. I mean, stores now are very cold, typically when you enter a store, also in America. So, but we had none of this, and so that's how they figured it out. Unfortunately, when you remove the bran layer and the germ, pretty much all the nutrients in a grain are lost as well. It's like throwing, yeah, it's pretty much all of them. Now, what is in a grain? What nutrients are? We talked about fiber, keeps you full longer. Protein, a lot of people don't know, grains contain protein, and obviously have been, you know, used like that and as a main part of the meals for centuries and thousands of years. Grains have minerals and vitamins, iron, magnesium, vitamin E, B vitamins. I mean, in Germany, women pride themselves in their skin and their hair and all of this. My hairdresser says, how does your hair always grow so fast? So I always say, well, whole grains.
There you go.
So I don't know. I mean, it's just, you know, I just make fun of him all the time. So, and, but basically, there are wonderful nutrients in the grain that, you know, only the whole grain will have. Now, if you eat a diet rich in whole grains, we can talk briefly about health. You all have heard about it, but it's really more and more research is supporting that many of the chronic diseases that we're now battling in America, like diabetes, stroke, heart disease, you definitely have a much lower risk when you eat a whole grain diet. The same is with blood pressure, certain cancers, and of course the risk also for just obesity in general, you know. So all of these things, I have eaten whole grains all my life, and I talk actually about this in the front of the book. I have, I wrote at the start something, musings on, let me check here what the title is. Musings on health, dieting, and good eating. Because when I was I was raised whole grains being part of our diet, but I became a journalist, and I was smoking, drinking. I was a real journalist. I drank a lot of coffee, and I was, in my early 20s. I had no idea what I was eating. I think my main two food groups were frozen pizza and something in Germany we call Schokoladenpudding mit Sahne, which is a chocolate pudding with whipped cream. I mean, this is really literally what I was eating. I was a typical young person. And a friend of mine at some point put a bowl of wheat berries. She had made a fresh wheat berry salad, and she put it in front of me. And I was very lucky. She had gone to the farmer's market. Today we call these people locavores. So she'd gone to the farmer's market. She had bought some fresh vegetables, fresh cheese, olive oil, lemon juice. It's very simple. She just put it in front of me. I talk about this in the book, and she says, taste this. And of course, in my case, it came full circle, because I remembered wheat berries from my childhood. And she never said, oh, you should eat this. This is really healthy. No, she just put it out there, and she said, try it, right? So taste it. And that's really, it's all about textures and flavors. In my case, it was a really very important experience, because it brought me back into the kitchen as a young woman. I got interested in grains. I started cooking with them. I was really fascinated by the different flavors and the textures. I started baking, experimenting. And that's how and ever since I've eaten grains. And I've never been on a diet ever again. The thing that I forgot to mention is, as a young woman, all I was doing was I was permanently on a diet of one sort or another. I mean, and of course I could never really stay on the diet, because I like food too much. And so it lasted all of 3 hours or something. And so that was really, until whole grains came back into my life. When you make whole grains the centerpiece of your plate, and you add vegetables, you add meat as an accent in much smaller portions, fish as an accent. I use everything in my cooking, but I use it in a way for flavor. And so when you do that, you will always be satiated. I mean, that's the beauty about grain eating. It really keeps you full and satisfied, and that's wonderful, and I love that. And for me, that was really a very important experience, because I was so preoccupied, like so many people, and we all have that, right? That we always think about dieting. And as I said, I've never been on a diet since. Yeah, any questions about that? Ancient grains? Why I call them ancient grains? Okay. Great. Okay. So, well, in a way, all grains are ancient, except maybe triticale, right? Someone said to me, triticale was only invented, it's true, in about 1950. It's a cross between a wheat and a rye. I still love triticale. I get it locally from my farm. Very tasty. But, most grains have been with us, and my intention was really to showcase those again. All the grains. So let's talk about wheat. I like to talk about wheat because we have the whole gluten-free and the whole gluten sensitivity topic. Is that something a lot of you also have heard about? Okay. So modern day wheat, especially the hard red wheat in America, I have to say, because it's very different from the wheat we get in Germany and also in Greece, has been bred largely to be easy to harvest with machinery. So not for taste, not for flavor, or not, let alone digestibility. Some people say, and I'm not talking of people that have celiac disease, because when you have celiac disease, you should never, ever try any grain with gluten. Which are the grains with gluten? Wheat, barley, and rye. Never, because it'll really make you very sick. However, there's a lot of people now in America that they think they are, or they are, because we don't really have a test for it, but they feel uncomfortable in their digestive system when they eat wheat. Modern day wheat, I think, can be the reason for that. Some people say that. I'm not, I have yet to see research. If you have research, the numbers are, I've heard so many different numbers. I have yet to see a reliable study on this. And please contact me if you do, because I would love to hear. What I've heard from people for many years, also in Germany, people say some of the ancient wheats are actually easier on our system. So what are ancient wheats? Spelt, kamut, and we can give these around, and farro. So why don't we give these around so you guys can take a look. So we're almost there here. What you can do is you can stick the card inside. So kamut, where's the farro? Just stick the card inside, then people can check it. And so this is the farro spelt. This is actually a spelt. So this is a farro spelt. I'll talk about that too. Yeah, exactly. I'll explain that too. We're getting now into the real highfalutin complications of what actually is farro, and I actually have written an article for a magazine called Popular Anthropology, which will be published shortly, but in the book also I talk about it. Because, so we said 3 ancient wheats, spelt, farro, there's actually more. But we're gonna confuse. The concern that I always have is I don't want you to be confused to get out of here. So so we have to be very gentle here. So kamut is easy. Kamut is still traditionally grown. It's a beautiful, huge wheat kernel. It's never been hybridized. And the family that grows it in Montana for the past 60 years, a farmer, it has now in the past 20 years become more popular. It's bronze colored, it's really beautiful, and it has a rich buttery flavor. It's really delicious. Thank you. 87 actually. Kamut salad, Moroccan inspired, I've made here with carrots, golden raisins, toasted walnuts, pomegranates, and a lemon dressing with a little bit of cinnamon. It's divine. I mean, the cinnamon is very much the Moroccan tradition. So kamut is one ancient wheat. Then we have spelt. Spelt is one, especially in German-speaking countries. We have like whole cities in Germany named after Dinkelsbühl. Dinkel is a German name for spelt. And it's a wonderful grain. And the Italians, and now it gets really complicated, the Italians call spelt farro grande. So when you get farro from Italians, in Italy it could be anything. It can be 3 kinds of wheat. But when we get farro here, it's typically a wheat called emmer. It's E-M-M-E-R. And that's what you also probably have, right? So I think this is done here. So we can turn this off now. Power off, okay. Do you have that little thing again? And so the Italians basically, part of our confusion with these ancient wheats has to do, when the Italians say farro, they mean 3 things. Farro grande I mentioned, spelt. Farro medio, emmer. Farro piccolo is what the Germans call Einkorn. It's some people say it's the oldest wheat. It's a tiny, delicious wheat that is now grown, and please tell me other sources. I'm always, in the book, I have Anson Mill that I use, because they grow it. They have really revitalized. You can get it in Italy also still. I believe one company now is selling Italian Einkorn. It cooks in 15 to 20 minutes when it's fresh. So it's a fantastic, plump, starchy, really delicious, worth seeking out to try. So this is another ancient wheat. So, but these are, the book was written to have things that are widely available. Things like Einkorn are hard to find. Einkorn is, actually means literally in German, single kernel. Korn is with a K, but otherwise just like the American, and Ein is E-I-N. So Ein means one kernel. So Einkorn is one kernel. So I'm going to finish this and then continue talking about these. So did you see that we had what is gone? So we're now adding shredded zucchini. Many of this is this how much did we need? 3? Is it measured?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I did.
It looks like
I
a
did.
lot.
Yeah, it might be.
Looks like
I
a
did
lot.
6
Since we're doing it,
zucchinis.
no, we want to make sure we have this right. You know, since it's for everyone, it's not a
It's not-
test, right? So how much do we need here?
It said 2 zucchini, so I did 6. I didn't
much
measure the
cups?
cups though.
Yeah.
I thought we were gonna measure as we put it in.
2, 4, 6. Well, we can.
It
we have
doesn't-
to-
Yeah, but it is a triple recipe. So.
Yeah. So
So it needs 6 cups. So I would say.
we're
Cool.
adding. So this is a bit too. I need my spoon. We need just something
your
a little more firm. You know, just something more firm. This is. Oh, it's okay. Well, I'll just use something here. I'll just use this one. This is. I just need
well,
something
actually,
bigger, right? I just wanted something bigger, because we're making such. See how big we. This is even a bigger pot. We almost could have used. So, lemon zest. Here we have. Now we're making a huge amount. We do dill. My mom uses a lot of dill, so that's fantastic. So, fresh dill. Fresh
Oh,
dill.
yeah.
Definitely want to use fresh dill. Dill is one of the herbs that doesn't dry very nicely. What you can do is, if you have leftover dill, you can chop it. You can put it in, like in the freezer. You can put it into ice cubes. Some people do that. Then you have it, you know, for soups or something. Or you can actually, I think it's better in Germany, we can even buy frozen dill. I think that's better than dry dill. Dry dill is usually a little less, or loses a lot of its flavor. So dill and sesame, toasted sesame seeds. And so what we're doing now is, I'm going to stir this together and let it sit for about 3 minutes or 5, you know, whatever works in your home. It doesn't matter. Why do I do this? That's right. The flavors will definitely mint. That's right. Perfect. What it also does, and why I like to do it, it takes the crunch out of the raw zucchini. I want it to be a little more appealing, so more soft. So that's why I said it's a mixture between a pilaf and a refreshing salad, because still, you know, the zucchini will not be cooked as a result, right? But they will soften and they will be nice. So you have a beautiful side dish. As I said, it's delicious with salmon, shrimp, with chicken breast, you know, any grilled thing you make in the summer, or, you know, now we have it just a very nice light lunch. We'll crumble it with some
add the
feta.
lemon
Oh
juice?
yeah, the lemon juice, thank you. Yeah. Is this 6 tablespoons? I normally don't make such a big amount, so again, I'm a home cook, right? So,
And the sesame I had measured.
yeah, that's great. No, this is
Okay.
fine. This was not nothing. No problem. No worries. This all looks beautiful. Look how beautiful it looks. I just love also how it looks. Oh yeah, the thing that we also did, I talk about quinoa and the germ ring. Okay. I did that
good.
last night. Yeah, I want to give that around. Do you have a small plate? We can give that around for people to look at. If they haven't had quinoa, like a little plate would be nice. Let me. And then we need something to serve it in, right?
Yeah.
So, great. So I want to just give some of this. I want people to see how the cooked quinoa looks. Can they see that here? Let me see. Yeah. Here. If you look at the grain, I'm just going to give this around right now, but you'll also see it in your own quinoa. When it cooks, it has a germ ring. It will unfurl. It's really pretty. And
I'll pass around the.
now, a very well-known chef last week said, if your grain unfurls, the quinoa, it's gone. You've overcooked it. And to which I say, who says? Because I like it that way. So, if you like your quinoa really crunchy, you know, like it has all this crunch, yes, I mean, 10 minutes, eat it. It's great. I mean, if you like that, right? It's a personal choice. I cook my quinoa until I see the grain, the germ
tail.
ring, the tail, yeah, unfurl, and I love that. So, you know, that's a personal choice, because people keep asking me these questions. How do you know your grain is ready? How do you know? Some people like their wheat berries really chewy. I don't. So in Germany also and in Greece, we cook our wheat berries really well. We soak them and we cook them. We cook them, in fact, until 10 or 20% in the pot. The starch will show. You know how the wheat berry will pop open? Some recipes will say, no, 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 no. Who says? Who says what's right or wrong? I like it. This is also actually how it was traditionally done, but I'm not saying, again, that what's traditionally done is right. This is how I like it. I find them also more digestible, because if I've seen recipes in the US, cook wheat berries without soaking for 35 minutes. If I would eat this, I could throw myself out the window the next day. I mean, I would be so sick to my stomach. I could not, they would be completely undigestible to me. So what I call, in the book, I've divided the grains into slow cooking and quick cooking. Why have I done that? Because we're all busy people. So during the week, quick cooking grains. We mentioned some: bulgur, quinoa, millet, buckwheat, polenta. All of these 15, 20 minutes on your table, even whole wheat couscous. Slow cooking grains, all of the ones that are typically more chewy. So those will typically cook in 45 to 60 minutes after soaking. I strongly recommend you soak your grains. Some people say it is indeed better for your digestive system. I just do it because I feel it. Now, these are rye, wheat berries, you know, whole grain barley, which is called hulled barley, to confuse you, of course, not for any reason. I don't know why barley is called hulled barley, and you know, but I'm not going to get into this. So basically all the whole grains, kamut, you know, farro. If there's a whole grain, the whole berry, it's chewy. I soak them, and then I cook them until some of the starch shows. Now, how do I do this when I'm busy? On the weekend is one way. I often actually do it during the week. I soak them in the morning before I go to work. I just pour some water on. I'm really very casual. In the book, I couldn't do any of this, but I'm very casual in my real life. So I soak them. I come home after work, and I just simmer them. Often, I don't eat them. Most often, I just simmer them for another meal while I cook my dinner, because they don't need any work. It's nothing, you know, it's just be there on the back of your stove, just simmering away for about 45 to 60 minutes, depending on the grain, right? But what I'm saying is, then you have a cooked grain. It can go in the fridge. How long does it last? 5 days. FDA approved. 7 days. Mark Bittman, New York Times fame, you know, he says 7 days in his book. I didn't dare to write this, but they do. When you chill grains properly after cooking, no problem. That's one way. So you will have, you know, your grains just in the fridge. Freeze them. Sometimes I have grains in the fridge. After 3 days, I don't know what to do with them anymore. I got tired of them. I stick them in the freezer in portion size. They can be thawed. They can be reheated in the microwave. They can be reheated on the stovetop. Very easy. So grains are practically indestructible. So let me tell you this. I mean, it's that easy. It should not be something that adds a burden to your life. It should really be something that you just eventually learn to incorporate into your life. And it's not going to be hard. Does that make sense? So I soak the, you know, basically what you would call, you know, something like rye, wheat, whole grain farro, whole grain kamut, you know, like all the ones that are chewy, long kernels, you know, that we're giving around right now, wheat berries. I mean, these are, you know, the tiny ones typically don't need soaking. In some traditional cultures, people soak even rice, right? So, you know, and some say it makes it more digestible. A great thing about soaking rice is it cooks faster. So if you have brown rice and you soak it a few hours, it'll cook faster. I mean, that's the beautiful thing. There's reasons why people traditionally used to do that. Don't tell me that people in the old days didn't work as much as we did, if not more, right? I mean, so these are things that people have done for health, like for digestibility, but also just for practicality, right? And do you pour the soaking water off or not? Well, do as you like. In the book, I've chosen to write drain and add fresh water, because this is what most people feel more comfortable with. However, I hear now people talking, and I like that. But I actually often use the same water because it's going to be cooked. If it's just out on the counter for about 8 hours, up to 24 hours, no problem, except if you put it again on a sunny 100-degree day on the windowsill, then yes, I mean, your grain will really start to germinate and it'll get all cloudy and everything. But other than that, no problem. Now, what do? You soaked your grains and you have no time to cook them. You know, that hour still is an hour, right, that they might take when they're slow cooking grains. Stick them in the fridge with the soaking water, you know, take them out after a day or two when you have time. No problem. I've had my grains out of laziness. I'm not recommending this for you guys to do, but I've had, you know, in the fridge, I forgot about them for 3 days, and then they start sprouting, even in the fridge, right? Well, what's going to happen? I cooked them. They're delicious. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. Some people now say it's actually more beneficial for you. Now, again, you know, this 5 million things. I do what works for me. Be sure that you cook them well after. When you have left them in the fridge and they started to sprout after a few days, you want to give them a really good cooking. I mean, I then really cook them for, you know, a minimum of whatever, half an hour or something, so that they're well cooked, right? So I don't want to recommend these things to you because I have done no research on that or anything, but there is no harm in that, because once you cook it, it's cooked. It's not going to, you know, this is how people have always done it. You don't need to throw your grains away. Oh, you know, all grains. She can talk much better about this. They can all be fantastically cooked in the pressure cooker. The only thing I want to say is do soak again some of these harder cooking grains. That's what I feel. It makes them, they cook also nicer. With beans, we have research with dried beans. Soaking dried beans makes them better digestible and they cook better. So some people never soak beans, but I have tried it side by side, and they cook up nicer, more plump, and that's what grains also do. Other than that, 10 minutes, you told me, for the wheat?
Just depends, like brown rice.
So we can serve this, actually.
I didn't know, hang on just a
Oh,
minute.
we need to taste for salt.
Yeah, taste for salt, and did you want to sprinkle that in,
Yeah, but
or
no,
as we serve it?
as we serve it,
Okay,
yeah.
and a little dill maybe sprinkled on top?
Let me put it this way so I can taste it twice. Yeah, I think it's fine. So maybe that's good. So now we can serve it.
Okay.
Oh, forgot about
All right, and we're going to actually
and we
serve
have to
it.
put the dill and the sesame on top too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Caleb. Hey, Caleb. She wants a sprinkle of the cheese and the dill.
Oh, we can actually put it here maybe, and then.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that not too much work?
Okay. All right, we'll serve this.
Sprinkle that
And
on.
I actually made a loaf of spelt bread for you. So this is spelt, and I made it in the bread machine. So we're going to serve that with the quinoa.
Great. So should we take that over? Let me take it over. No.
Spelt only. Yes.
Thank you. So I wanted to give that around also for you guys, because you're probably going to eat it without looking at it. But here you can see the little germ ring, how it unfurls, and that's very pretty. I actually really like that. So.
We need another plate. Is that an okay? But
I
cooking.
have a question for you. Since, you know, you're Greek and German, you have a favorite cookbook, Greek, a favorite one or German, besides the question of a favorite one from Boston?
That's a good question. So, favorite cookbook from Greece or Germany? I mean, I love the books by Diane Kochilas, who is American, who moved back to, so a Greek American who moved back to Greece. She's done, let me think if I can, out of my head right away, say, I think every one of her cookbooks is really beautiful. She's written a very wonderful tome, The Glorious Foods of Greece, which is really introduces you to lots of traditional, you know, Greek meals all across Greece. I mean, this was a major project. She got a huge, at least one award for it. It was a very challenging book to write. Diane Kochilas, so it's Kochilas. And I actually think she's out with a new book. So if you Google that, or if someone has right now, I mean, she's a great she's a great cook. She's done a lot of books. She's done a book called Meze, which is the appetizers that we eat in Greece. She's done a book, a vegetarian cookbook, which I actually think is one of the nicest vegetarian cookbooks that I have. A lot of cookbooks. I love it. It was her very first cookbook. I think she did this like in '89, and I'm sure, you know, in this age, you'll find it. I mean, I forgot the title, but it's a beautiful book, and it's really very much because she's also not a vegetarian. It's just about good food, so it's mesmerizing. I mean, she has like she uses fava beans, and she combines them in ways that are absolutely fantastic. I mean, and the whole book is really beautiful. So Diane Kochilas for Greek cooking, I really love. German cooking, yes. You have to wait, because so far, I mean, German cuisine we all associate with sausage, right? Maybe not much more. Well, Germany has obviously changed a lot. And a young woman, Luisa Weiss, of internet fame, on her wonderful blog, and I encourage you, she's an immensely gifted writer. She's expecting her first baby. She just finished her first cookbook, which is coming out this fall. I believe it's called My Berlin Kitchen. Her blog is called The Wednesday Chef. It's considered one of the best food blogs in the world. I mean, you know, it's a real, and there's a reason. I mean, she's cooking every Wednesday through the food section. Like, she picks a dish in a food section from an American newspaper, from the New York Times to the LA Times, and she has an incredible humor. Her writing is wonderful. I mean, if any of you are interested also in you know, good writing, which is also obviously my own background is in journalism. There's like 14 essays in my book because writing is also my passion. I love Luisa's work, and she's coming out with this cookbook, My Berlin Kitchen, this fall. And I think she will showcase German food the way it should be showcased now, because it's completely modernized. I mean, we have such a vibrant food culture, and what I like about Germans, when they eat, they're all purists. And that obviously has gone into my book also. So, you know, what I use is maybe herbs and spices, but I will not use, you know, additives or something to make a bread, for example, rice batter or something. I want to use what we have, what we've traditionally used. And Germans are really in the ingredients. They're very focused on the best ingredients. If you have a chance in Bavaria, even a supermarket butter from Bavaria, I mean, it's going to be so rich and so fresh. I mean, you'll never have anything like it. Some of you will know the Irish butter. You know, if you've had Irish butter, very tasty. European butters are often a little higher in fat. It's really just like something between 2 and 5% more fat. So instead of, you know, 89% or something, they'll have 93%. It's a very small amount more. It makes all the difference. And of course, freshness. German milk is famous. I mean, we're now exporting milk into Eastern Europe and everything because it's really fresh. And they have very good facilities now where they also try to process it as little as possible, so to maintain the nutrients. I mean, Germans are really passionate about that, and that I love. And so, yeah, so I hope that answered your question. From Boston? Oh, a cookbook from Boston? Oh, yeah, we have actually an award-winning book. She was competing with me, and she's the nicest woman, so I was absolutely crushed that we were both competing for the Julia Child Award. But she got the Best American Book, and I got the Julia, so we were fine. Like, she also was very sweet, because I said, I don't want to be competing with you. Her name is Amy Traverso, and she has written the Apple Lovers Cookbook. And so it's really wonderful, and already won a major award for it. It came out, she's very sweet. And then we have another colleague of mine is called Kathy Gunst, G-U-N-S-T. She's written a cookbook, I believe, From a Maine's Kitchen, or Letters from a Maine Kitchen. Also just out, and also a very beautiful book. So these are two. And then we have, yeah, these are two. Thank you. Amy Traverso, T-R-A-V-E-R-S-O. English English is my third language, so you have to bear with me. Traverso. Traverso. So Italian, I guess Italian roots. So yeah. So I guess they're serving this now. Very good. So we were still on the gluten, yeah? Sorry? Bread recipes?
Not
We're not showing bread, but after some convincing, my editor allowed me to put some German-style breads into the book. Now, I know the American palate, and I know that we like soft and light breads in America. We don't like too much of a chew, so I had to do a compromise. I have 100% whole wheat bread, which is really light, and it has a story, I'll tell you in a minute. And I have a true German-style, dense and chewy, highly aromatic loaf, which is very easy to make. So those two I'm going to briefly talk about because they're very different. The light loaf is called floating sesame loaf. Here, page 71. This is the loaf you want to make with your children because the dough rises in a pot of water. I want to write the story about the roots. I've been researching the roots of this recipe for years. This is a German source, but I tracked down the woman. She's now 85 years old, and she said, no, it's not my recipe. And I said, can you tell me? I have never seen a dough that rises in a pot of water because it's the easiest dough to make. I've made these with 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and they love it because you pop it in, you stir the flour and the water, and a little bit of yeast, pop the whole thing into the water, and wait. In that time, you clean up your kitchen, and occasionally you should glance at your pot because eventually, after about 20 minutes, your dough will rise to the surface. Now, once it rises to the surface, you pick it out, you let the water drain in your hands, put it on a baking stone or a turned around baking sheet that you've preheated. You want to have a nice heat, and you bake it. This is going to be the lightest 100% whole wheat loaf. If you make this a couple of times or make it blindly, it's initially a bit awkward, because it's kind of like this kind of wet dough. But I've written a whole paragraph in the book about the magic of wet dough. There is a reason why. It makes lightness, but also the wetter your dough is, you don't need to do any kneading because the water helps with the gluten development, what you normally do with kneading. So there's both of the recipes. I'm lazy. Did I say this? I did, right? I'm very lazy. I love good bread, and I couldn't get good bread for the longest time. So you're getting 2 bread recipes, in fact, 3 bread recipes here that are in the German tradition, but for super lazy people. I mean, these breads anyone can make, and there's no kneading in either of them. The German-style aroma bread with coriander and fennel, you stir different types of flour together, a teeny bit of yeast, and leave it on your kitchen counter, and water. A lot of water. You'll be looking at this, you'll be like, what's that? This is what will help with gluten development. After 12 to 18 hours, you just fold it over a couple times, let it sit on your kitchen towel. There's no kneading involved. It's really literally, you fold it over 4 times. It's going to be a little wet. This is something, I describe it in detail. Nothing, people have cooked from the book now for 1 year. I mean, I should still knock on wood, but no one has, I've seen the breads, I've seen the floating sesame loaf on the internet, and people have succeeded, every single one of them. I mean, it's very detailed descriptions. My recipe in Germany, the original where I tracked this woman down who wrote it, was this big. I mean, literally, there was nothing there for me. And I was 25 years old, and I succeeded, which shows how easy it is. But in the book, the recipe now goes over 2 pages because I wanted to make sure that everyone can do it. So I describe very detailed what it'll look like so that no, this is weird, but that's how it's supposed to look like, right? When I did it myself, I thought, oh, what's that? And then, of course, it turned out beautifully, which means anyone can do it. You don't need to watch temperature in your kitchen. You don't need to worry about, how it says double, double in bulk and stuff with yeast dough. None of this matters here. All it matters is follow the recipe. It's dead easy. As I said, I've done it with kids, and they love it. And if you're getting really good at it, if you've done it a few times, I suggest you make my favorite, which is the variation, because it's a little more involved. It's not difficult. You make a ring from it, and you have it toasted hazelnuts and raisins, and you use white whole wheat flour. Are you familiar with white whole wheat flour? I'm going to talk about that too for those of you who aren't. It's a beautiful loaf, and it looks gorgeous, like on an Easter table or something. It's not difficult. It's just, this is for anyone that bakes. It's a no-brainer, but otherwise you just have to try a little bit. These breads I've done all my life, and I've done these when I had no clue what baking meant. Now I do, but at the time I had no. White whole wheat. Does everyone know, or should I explain what white whole wheat is? Okay.
White wheat.
Yeah. So it's basically a strain of wheat. I've recently learned, again, we never stop learning, in Asia, they use it actually in the refined version, not as a whole grain. They use the white strain of the wheat to make their noodles. I didn't know that. I learned that a couple days ago. Now, it's really literally just a different type of wheat that's lighter in color, and it also doesn't contain tannins. So some people say it's less bitter. I'm not sure about this. It does have a natural sweetness, but it's not. I think if your flour is bitter, it's probably just old. So, but it's definitely a naturally sweeter wheat, and it's lighter in color. So if your family says, I'm not eating any whole wheat because my bread is dark or my pizza dough or something, well, use white whole wheat. You'll be surprised. They will eat everything. The whole book. We have constantly kids, visitors coming through. I never, put out and say, oh, you better eat that healthy pizza I just made. No, I'm just saying, look at that pizza that I just made. And I will be using white whole wheat exactly for that reason. So no one will know. And then it's 100% whole grain. It has all the nutrients, all the fiber, all the nutrients that a regular whole wheat has. But it's basically lighter in color and naturally sweeter. I personally like to use it for baked goods. I like the hardiness and the flavor of also real wheat, right? Or of spelt or of emmefaros. So that is something, it's a personal choice. Some people don't like it at all, so they will use white whole wheat, and they'll be very happy. Does it make sense?
Do you have a question? Do you have a question?
Okay.
That's feta. We don't sell feta. The tart had our goat cheese in it that we sell. The raw milk. It's actually a yogurt goat cheese. It's really nice. So it's just even more pre-digested. So yeah, very nice. But no, that's feta. Is it a little strong? No, the tart had the goat cheese in it, which I thought. Here, you need another one.
About the currants? Okay, currants are just a type of a grape. They're very distinct in aroma, and it's just another type of a grape, but it is traditionally from Greece, and only from Greece. Have I ever seen from Zante? I mean, I've never seen currants from anywhere else. Have you? That's actually a good question. So I should research that. I've never researched it. For me, they're just normal. So I've never even thought about it, right? But it's basically an aromatic. It's a type of a raisin. So. Oh yeah, there's many types of. It's just like many types of grapes, right? Even golden. I mean, we have the very basic golden and darker raisins, right? But there's many. I mean, just like you have a gazillion types of grapes, you can make them into raisins. And this is dark raisins.
This
These look organic. Oh, these are the currants. Okay, no, I sorry, I didn't see that properly. Yeah, no. No,
Yeah.
they look like the California duck for a second, exactly. Yeah. No.
They're really just, they look to me like a
They have
very
a-
small raisin.
They have a very nice flavor, and there's a one.
But is it a
Well, it's a grape. Yeah, it's absolutely a grape. Yeah. It's a.
I had to go to a couple of stores to find the currants.
Yeah.
And I think you could definitely use a grape. I mean, like I said, this is a suggestion.
Oh, I mean, in this, if you don't find currants, I mean, you'll just use raisins. I mean, no problem, right? You can even use in this one, I mean,
I think
I
the
don't know.
dried cranberries would be really nice. With
cranberries would be really nice. You would probably want to reduce the lemoniness a bit so that it's not too tangy, right?
And the nice thing about the dried cranberries that we sell, I don't know if you've ever bought cranberries, you know they're heavily sugared. The nice thing about the dried ones that we sell, they're infused with apple juice, so there's no sugar there.
Nice.
They're the only ones I've ever seen. You can't find them in the grocery store that don't have the sugar in them.
How have you been eating the quinoa? Yeah, how is it? Oh, wow,
I'm
nice.
ready to go dig in.
Great.
Does,
This is very much, I mean, this recipe was truly inspired by the flavors that my mom uses dill again without measuring. She throws currants, dill, sesame, classic, combinations in Greece, but also, in the countries of the Ottoman Empire, we have the salty, sweet, we really like that. And grains really love that. I mean, grains cry for these kind of ingredients, that you add dried apricots or nuts to it. I mean, you want to enliven, give the grains a flavor. And as I said, some you can even cook right away. I think we had just started talking about one of the breakfast dishes that I love is a creamy farro, where I cook the farro with a stick of cinnamon and with anise seeds. So it infuses the grain right away with flavor. And then I roast grapes in the oven. And then I add a little bit of half and half, stir it together with the farro and the grapes and some honey. I mean, it's
I'm not
wonderful.
kidding. The only time I ever wanted to go put the cookbook down was to go make something out of it. I just would read it. It was like, oh. And that kamut, carrot, pomegranate salad that she showed you, I made that Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it was definitely one of the favorite dishes. And I added just a little pinch of tarragon. Just
That's also
to
nice.
sweeten it, just give it a little sweetness there too. So, oh man, it's one of our favorite dishes. But I did want to finish answering the question about cooking in the pressure cooker.
Oh, yeah.
The grains. Like I said, the quinoa, it's 1 minute it cooks, and you'll see the little tail, and it gets almost translucent. Brown rice normally takes.
I'm going to grab a sampling here. Chef needs to eat, otherwise she'll pass out.
Of course.
Let me get
put a
some
little dill on
for
it.
your mom also.
There you go.
Thank you. I'll get one for your mom also.
There you go.
I've not traditionally soaked my wheat berries and my kamut. You can do them. They cook in about 18 to 20 minutes. But I did, Maria really said, I really want the soft wheat soak because of the texture. And I will tell you, I soaked it overnight, and then I only cooked it for, the soft wheat for the next dish, the dessert that we're making. And then this morning, I did use the liquid that I soaked it in, and I only pressure cooked it for 10 minutes. And it's very soft and very nice. It doesn't still have that chew. Even after 20 minutes in a pressure cooker, the kamut and the wheat berries still seem to have a little bit of chew to them. So I did notice that soaking kind of helped soften that and just made it cook up a lot softer. So I think it just depends. If you're doing like the kamut salad, I didn't mind. It had raw carrots and things in it. I didn't mind the chew. But something like this, we're putting it in yogurt for a dessert. You might not want to be, chewing, having a little chew there. But I can hardly do anything without my pressure cooker. I just really, really love my pressure cookers. And you'll just be amazed at what you can do with grains. I know, I have 3 or 4 different sizes, and that's what I love about these, because it can really speed things up. Another thing about soaking your grains, this is if you do want to do that so that you have a little softer texture, one thing you can do is put like a cup of grain in a quart mason jar, ball jar, canning jar, and then pour your water, cold water over that, fill it up, put a lid on it, put it in the refrigerator. And that way you have soaked grains, and it'll stay in there several days. You know, and it'll soak up the water, but then you have it, and you don't have to worry about that you put it out on the counter, oh, I forgot about it. Just go ahead and put it in there, and then you have it anytime you're like, oh, I want to make the salad, oh, I forgot to soak grain. You've got them in there already. So that's a little trick I learned with making soy milk and things like that have to be soaked, to always have them soaked on. Yeah, do they expand? Oh, yes, 1 cup made
3 cups.
about
It's
3 cups of
typically
cooked grains.
1 cup of grain. That's very typically, I have a table on page 24 where I give exact numbers, you know, after testing it a million times. And of course, it never comes out twice the same because grains are grains. So we kind of struggle with that table as well. But it's pretty close to what the table says. So it'll tell you what 1 cup of, you know, barley, pearl barley, or halt barley, how much grain they will give you, you know. So. But again, it's a living food, right? Like anything is, there's variation in there. So,
Well, like she said, farro, there's, we have emmer and we
And
have
spelt.
spelt. We have both of those. The einkorn we're looking at, we're finding a source for it. But spelt is, I mean, you can, if you see what she passed around, it's basically the same thing.
absolutely, these wheats also in the book. I mean, if it says a wheat berry and you can't digest the modern day wheat, for example, if you have trouble, try replacing it either with emmer
Spelt?
farro or spelt, right? So absolutely, or with kamut. Absolutely, no problem. I mean, they have a similar flavor. They have slightly different, but similar, so no problem.
And like the bread that I passed out was the same basic recipe that I always make. I just substituted spelt. I will tell you this, your spelt and your emmer will take more flour because they're a higher moisture, lower gluten, lower protein grain. So in my bread recipe that takes 4.5 cups of flour, I used 5.5 cups of spelt flour. And that's what I find. And it probably could have even taken a little bit more, but I did it in the bread machine. If I'd been kneading it by hand, I could have seen that it needed a little bit more. But I just threw it in the bread machine. How many of y'all have my red cookbook? You want bread recipes? How many of you don't have my red cookbook? You need to get it. It's so easy. That basic recipe is just so easy. I can't wait to try this floating bread. I'm like ready to go home and try it. You're like, get me going on something. I'm like, can we just do this real quick? I wish I had looked at that recipe. I would have done it today for y'all. Because I got the stones and everything hot. Man, I wish I'd seen that. You should have told me. Do that one. I don't think we have to have a class on it. I'll probably serve it. I'm even thinking the canning class next week. I'm going to serve this floating bread. I don't care. It doesn't have anything to do with canning, but we're going to do it. So, how many of y'all coming to the canning class? All right. Well, it's canning, dehydration, and yogurt making. And that's one thing. Have you noticed? Well,
yeah.
y'all probably
Talk
haven't
about
noticed how much yogurt we've used. But the tart had the yogurt. The dessert we're going to make for you has yogurt. And I just want to reiterate something Maria talked about. It is sad what is done to dairy products here in this country. It really is. We've adopted 2 children from Latvia, and we've spent lots of time there. In fact, over spring break, we went back to Latvia on a mission trip. I did not come home with a child. I've got one I really wish someone would adopt because it's breaking my heart, but we'll talk about that later. But anyway, the milk there is their regular milk you buy in the store is like the raw milk I drink. The cheese is just so full flavor. The kefir, the sour cream, and you actually buy it according to cream content. And it's like nothing you've ever had. And here's the deal. We've spent now about 12 weeks total in Latvia, maybe even a little bit more. I never saw an obese person but one time in all these trips and all the places we went. And that's why I wanted to see Maria. Look at her. And that's the thing, because you don't overeat these foods. They're very satisfying. They're very filling. And I was getting ready this morning watching Fox News, and there was a man on there that's written a book about, he's been on every diet in the country, and finally found this one, wrote a book on what was the best. Do you know what his #1 suggestion was to lose weight? Chew your food. Chew your food, eat slowly. And I think that's the other thing in America. We eat quickly and we eat fast, and it's not a sit down and enjoy fellowship anymore like it should be. And that's what I love. Huh? No, we don't eat food, and we eat it, I don't know for what reason, you know. And someone said it one time, if you're not hungry enough to eat an apple, you're not hungry. So, you know, so think about that, you know. But that's what I so loved about Maria's book when I read it. It was just like, wow, you just want to enjoy food and the things that God has given, and not enjoy food like we do as gluttons, but just as fellowship, and you want to do it to share it with somebody. I don't know. It just kind of brings on a whole new thing. I'm sorry. We're digressing here. We're going to make this last recipe.
Pumpernickel flour is typically a rye flour, but more coarsely ground. However, companies do all kinds of things. You have to really check it out, right? Pumpernickel flour should be more coarsely ground, but it's not, you know, you cannot be sure. I mean, that's why grinding your own flour is ultimately the best solution. It's only rye. Pumpernickel flour should be nothing else but rye, ground rye, but coarsely ground. But it will be different coarse, which makes writing a cookbook really difficult. So you have to, I often put in every recipe, these were tested in my kitchen 5 to 13 times in my own kitchen, every single recipe. And it went out to testers, to home cooks that sent me feedback. And they were, you know, changed as a result, right? So everything in the book. And one of the big issues we ran into is what companies label what. They are getting better at it because people are eating more grains and whole grain flours. But so you have to make sure, usually I write exactly, you know, this works really well with this type of flour. So then you can try it once, and then you can, for example, grind your own. But then at least you know what it should be like, because that's the hard part. If you've never made a pumpernickel, I actually have a pumpernickel bread, a traditional German, there's one baker still from 1644 in Germany, something like that. It's in the book. He makes the pumpernickel from rye and water and nothing else with natural fermentation. In the air, the bacteria will, you know, there's enough yeasts in the air that will make, you know, help a dough rise. Now, this bread, this rye, is in traditional steam ovens for 24 hours. It will steam at a very low temperature. I interviewed him. I actually wrote a story about him. And in Germany, we still have fairly good pumpernickel, but we have mostly also forgotten about this tradition. In the US, of course, you make pumpernickel with molasses, vinegar, white flour, who knows what. I mean, I have no idea. It has nothing to do with pumpernickel. You know, what I call a real pumpernickel. Now, this one I've modeled after a traditional loaf. So it has pumpernickel flour, the coarse rye. I added a bit of whole wheat because I don't have, you know, the abilities in my house for natural, and in everyone's kitchen. So wheat will help with the rising. And I added whole rye berries that I soaked for texture, which I like. Just a little bit of water, a little bit of oil, and a teeny bit of molasses, because the sugar will attract the natural yeast. So you need a bit, it's like two teaspoons here for the whole loaf. So it's not to sweeten the loaf, but really to help the yeast, you know, help the bread, exactly, the yeast growth. Now, I just stir all of this together, and I forget about it. This is the beauty. I mean, this is what I said. I'm lazy. So I stir this together, and I get back to it. You know, I haven't made it in a couple, let me check here. I think after like 12, oh, see here, it's 18 to 24 hours. You can just leave it on your kitchen counter, and you can see it rise. And you would like to make this in the South. It's actually great because you often have 85 degrees. That's the best temperature for this, because this is what, you know, yeast loves, right? Also, when you make sourdough, this is the ideal temperature for it. So you look at it, and it'll have not risen like a bread, you know, like this, but just a little. You can, I describe it all. It's exactly there. You know what you do with your finger to check it, and then you bake it. I bake it. I shut it with I try to imitate the German steam oven, so I shut it with the aluminum foil nice and tight, and I put it on top of a pan of water, hot water in the oven, and it cooks for 4 hours. It's absolutely divine. What happens to rye when you cook it for so long at very slow? It's at 225. What happens to the rye? Rye is naturally tangy. When you cook it so long at slow temperatures, it turns sweet naturally. It's the most amazing transformation in a bread you'll see. It's a complete different animal. I've cooked it for a lot of Americans, right? Also people that would normally just have the regular pumpernickel, they loved it. It's a supremely dense loaf, but it's soft. It's not like chewy or anything. It's, you know, it's dense because it's a classic rye. I mean, rye is really something, if you don't add a sourdough to it or something, there's no other way you make it right. But it's soft and sweet. It's going to be naturally sweet. You serve this like with a good fresh cheese, like a Gouda, or obviously traditionally in Germany we use also cold cuts with it. I like mine just with a good butter and a sprinkle of salt to play off that sweetness. It's an unbelievable experience. It's really, I mean, I've had to find someone who didn't like this bread, and it's very unusual. Rye has actually a certain type of fiber which fills you up really good and keeps you full long. It's a fantastic grain just to have in your life. It's so tasty. And when I was about 5 years old and I had my very first real German pumpernickel, I remember chewing on it forever and being really embarrassed because it turned so sweet. And I thought that was strange. Why? I didn't tell anyone. I was chewing, and it was so good. And I was so embarrassed. And it took me years later, I remember that as a kid, I was embarrassed how enjoyable that was. So I guess it was all already in my crib. There was my career, which I didn't know. I remembered it when I wrote this recipe. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so great. Let's make dessert.
Okay. Dessert.
Yeah, dessert. There's a whole chapter of dessert. Maybe you can, let me see. We should, where's the Grand Marnier? Do we have a Grand Marnier?
right there.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So we should have,
It's
this is
on
just
page-
you've made it already.
No,
right? So
that's
this is
just the dry fix.
No, but
Yeah.
this is
Yes.
just for testing. Okay.
That's just
So
for you to demo. The dessert
This
we're
is-
making is on page 203.
We're making wheatberry fools with Grand Marnier figs. Now, I don't recommend you make this for your kids. This is an adult only. For children, use freshly squeezed orange juice. It's very tasty. It's Greek yogurt, orange zest, it's honey sweetened, wheat berries. It's figs that we've soaked in Grand Marnier. So just finally, how do you know if you have good figs? I like to buy Greek or Turkish figs. Obviously, I'm totally prejudiced, so don't get me going on this one. But I really like them in this dessert. How do you know when you buy these packages whether your figs are fresh or whether they have been on the store shelf for 5 years? Feel it. That's all. You just threw the package. I mean, this is what my mom does, and I have always thought, well, my mom is weird, but actually it's the only way to find out. So you just go and squish it. You want your figs to be soft, right? And that's when they're really tastiest because they'll be from the last season. And then, you can eat them after 5 years. Again, this is how people used to preserve food, and I'm sure they were happy to have them even after 5 years, but they taste best from the last season, right? So you want them really fresh. So we soak these figs, finely chopped figs, with Grand Marnier. Now, 1 cup of yogurt. I love that. It's so nice. This is wonderful.
Yes.
It's so great. Yeah.
This
so
is the yogurt strainer. So
Yeah,
that's
she's-
basically what Greek yogurt is. It's strained yogurt. And I love this one. There's other styles on the market that just are like cheesecloth and it kind of sits out in the open. But this is so nice because it's a contained container. And so this will hold the 32-ounce container of yogurt, and you just put it in there and put the lid on and pop it in the refrigerator. And this was overnight. We drained this. So
Which yogurt did you use?
I used a whole milk. I used a
Beautiful.
Stonyfield. You can make your own
Yeah.
yogurt, and which I'll be teaching that this week. So easy, and kefir. So there you go. Thursday. This coming Thursday. I'm sorry. Thursday.
So the dessert, actually, the wheatberry food. So it's It's a dessert with Greek yogurt, also a little bit of cream. So it has the tanginess of Greek yogurt and then the loftiness of the, softly whipped cream. And I mentioned, I like to say this is how I like to eat my wheat berries. It works really well with the saffron waffles as a topping also. And you can also add it to a brunch buffet, when you have a late, lazy Sunday. And again, right, like otherwise you would use freshly squeezed orange juice, obviously, when you want to go to work afterwards and you want to have a decadent dessert for breakfast. Now, a little bit of honey. This is all honey sweetened. There's no sugar.
That's 4 tablespoons. So
Yeah,
I'll
I
use
figured.
half of
Yeah,
this
thank
and
you.
half of that.
So great. Thank you. I'll have that, and maybe you can zest a bit of orange actually late on that. So. Say again? Oh, sorry. And a little bit of cinnamon. Cinnamon, yogurt, and the Greek cinnamon, yogurt, and 2 tablespoons of honey. So this is basically the recipe in the book. And then we're zesting an orange, so about a tablespoon of orange zest. And when you buy your Greek yogurt, it's not going to be as nice and fresh as this one, where it's, so in the container, I always suggest you beat it, because it becomes just nice and creamy, right? It's a very basic thing, but my husband never does it. And I was like, please beat my yogurt, because it's really also tasty. I mean, it's like little things like this that I like to do and that we do. And I like what she said. You can strain your own Greek yogurt. You just buy a container. Even like 6 hours is fine in the fridge. And if you don't have this contraption, which is very nice, keeps it nice and tidy in your fridge, you can simply use 2 layers of kitchen paper or cheesecloth. You put the yogurt inside into a fine mesh sieve on top of a container, and then the whey will come out. If you have a good quality whey, you can actually drink that. In Germany, they sell it in the supermarket. It's considered a super health food because it has all those nutrients. So don't throw it away. You can do all kinds of things. You can use it when you make bread.
Use it as a liquid in your bread dough. It'll give a nice tartness.
A nice tartness, exactly. You should not throw that away, So here we have yogurt, honey, cinnamon, orange zest.
And I'm going to whip the whipping cream.
So, exactly, with a little bit.
This is the double whisk whipping bowl.
Wheat berries.
I'm just adding a little honey here to the whipping cream.
Nice machine. Did I say I have a hand blender, right? A hand mixer. It's a German machine, so obviously it's very nice.
Actually, this one is Swedish.
Oh, it's Swedish. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But it was like the Electrolux brand. What is that? Is that also Swedish? The Electrolux. Didn't they buy it from the?
It's still made in Sweden.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
it
this
was
one's
always.
Sweden.
That's right. So. Okay. So we have our figs. We soak them. I soak them for about 15 minutes. We didn't wait now long enough, but we have the dessert ready. So I'm just going to demo this right now. So you want to strain these. Let me get a strainer here. Small. After about 15 minutes, and you use basically leftover wheat, kamut, whatever, farro, again, anything you can use. If you have left over a cup, that's all you need. You don't need much, right? Thank you. So we'll drain those. And in my last cooking class, actually, you keep a few of these figs aside for garnish, about 2 tablespoons. And you add some more zest to the garnish. And you do keep the liquor, because you're going to use this also for the garnish. So you don't throw it out. All of this. Now, in my last class a couple months ago, not like in one class a couple months ago, we had no garnish because one of the participants drank the liquor.
Oh,
So it's really funny because I'm like, where's the garnish? Oh, I drank it.
okay then.
Yeah, so I mean, there's always funny things that happen in hands-on classes, right? It's a total chaos usually, and it's a lot of fun. But so now basically you saw it. I mean, that was really hard, and you'll see how hard it is because you see what a dessert do you get out of this. So we're adding the figs to this. And then we're folding in the cream. Great. Do you all know how to fold in properly? I'll demo that because that's still something that
Do you need some more sauce?
you fold this in 3 stages.
wants to pour
You know,
it over. I
anyone
didn't
that's
know
doing a lot of pastry and stuff will know. But there is a nice technique because you don't want to, you just beat all this air in here. You're cutting through the center and go around at the bottom of the hill. And you, sorry, at the bottom of the pot. So, and you're turning your bowl. What happens is, as a result, it gets folded in without you ever, is that visible? Can you see this? Okay. Exactly. You don't want to stir it in. That's the only, it's very easy. It's not, and you see already, we only have added a little bit of the cream, but already it looks nice and beautiful. And that's all it is. There's nothing, you know, it's, so you go inside, see how I cut, and then you go at the bottom. And then you turn the bowl and cut in again. And automatically, basically, you're mixing it in without doing anything. And so, see how beautiful it becomes? And that's it. It's not really difficult.
That's
but it's
a
a great,
dessert. How nice.
actually, it's a great technique to know. I mean, properly folding in cream, egg whites, that's something you should really know in your kitchen because you'll need it all the time. This is one of the basic pastry school things that is worth understanding how it works and using, because if you get into, you know, mousses and all these wonderful things that taste amazingly good, it's good. It's a very simple thing, nothing complicated. Again, I cut in, I go around, I cut in, I go around, I cut in, and then of course that, you know, that goes fast as you become. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. And see how beautiful it is now? All nice and lofty. So you can eat this. I chill it. It's dessert. It's nicer. We've chilled it. So they've made it ahead, and they're beautiful. They're working very hard. I actually, since this is our last course, I want to thank everyone for working so hard. Thank you, Caleb. So hard. They've been making all this food ahead. Sharon, thank you. It was really amazing. And obviously, and you're going to get this in a minute. And that's a boozy dessert. So, and there's many more actually. So we can talk about them more. Question? Who prevents you from doing it? Absolutely, absolutely. Would be wonderful. I mean, this also came to me at some point, because this is really combining my 2 cultures, right? In Greece, we have all these yogurt, honey, orange zest, you know. In Germany, we love cream. We have a saying that is, aber bitte mit Sahne, which means, please with whipping cream, which means if we have a cake, we will never, in America, when I always whip cream. In America, if I say to people when I have a cake, I said, you want some whipping cream? It's, no. And I always say, yes. So, and that is very much the German tradition. So here, you have some whipping cream, but again, the servings are small, right? So we are, you know, I'm keenly aware, and this is how I was raised. You know, Germans now, our cookies in Germany have become almost as big as American cookies. We have now muffins that are this big. We never had muffins before. But now, you know, not only did we start, we had first these small muffins about 10 years ago. Now the muffins are just like, you know, we're having the same thing all over the world. We have muffins now in India. We have a middle class in India, which doesn't fit into the tiny cars anymore. So, I mean, our eating habits are spreading fast, right? And so in the book, I try to do this different. So whenever I make something that's richer, I will certainly be keenly aware of that, and I will just do what I've done in my childhood, what I remember. For example, also I make cookies. All the cookies in the book are about this big. It's very much in the European tradition, and that's how I was raised. I remember doing a cookie for Savoir magazine, a classic German Pfeffernüsse cookie. My cookie was this big. When it ended up on the magazine, it was, I think, at least double the size. So today, I think they wouldn't change my recipe. At the time, I didn't say anything because I thought, okay, you know, if they think this is more appealing to American readers, right, like who am I to say? Today, of course, we know, right, that we don't really need to eat a cookie the size of, because all we want is just something nice and sweet. And so all the cookies have a wonderful cookie here that you, I use amaranth flour, which is a very nutty, someone had asked about ancient amaranth. Amaranth flour with white whole wheat, walnuts, and a bit of brandy. Very much, again, you see these, how beautiful they are. And then I coat them into tiny amaranth seeds. So delicious, crumbly, buttery, classic butter cookie, really delicious. But these are small. I mean, this is a rich cookie, there's no question. But it is 100%, uses 100% whole grains. But it's a small cookie, it's a treat. Any questions about that? You had a question earlier. I'm sorry we didn't get to that. Yes? They use? Interesting.
They use
Well, that's
beer to
beer.
soak the beans, is what
So
she's saying.
someone said in Colombia? Very interesting. So they soak beans in beer. Well, it adds flavor. Maybe it even helps soften the bran. Probably, yes. I've heard the baking soda. It also helps soften the bran. Great, great. I've heard about the baking soda. I've never heard about soaking grains in beans, so that's another thing I have to try. Do you, does it change the flavor? Okay, because, interesting. Interesting.
Liquid? When you soak it with soda. Now, the beer, though, does that change the flavor of the beans? You rinse them, so you drain it and then rinse that off to cook them?
No, you use the water, you use everything with the beer and tasty. And also, beans grow a lot.
Yeah, rehydrates. They swell, yes. Mm-hmm. And so you cook your beans, after you've soaked them, you cook them in the soaking water?
Do you cook them in the beer?
Or do you pour that off?
In the beer?
Okay, because that's something, from the 70s, 80s, I grew up seeing my mom raising all these. We don't use canned at all, but we use the
Pressure cooker.
all the time.
Huh.
For beans, it's wonderful.
The microwave at that time. So, and we eat a lot of beans and a lot of kind of beans. They eat more red beans, more black beans, dark beans. But always eat them first and then you soak them and use that water. If you rinse that water, it's not going to be thick and creamy.
Okay.
Well, there's actually, this is, not in the grains part. I've actually done some research on beans because I was teaching a class at the only school for professional chefs in Massachusetts, the Cambridge School of Culinary Arts, just 2 weeks ago, and I did a lot of research on beans. One of the reasons beans have something that's called oligosaccharides, and that is what gives people, a little bit of trouble with the digestion. So some people say if you throw the soaking water out, these oligosaccharides will actually, some of them will be removed. So it's easier on your system. Now, some people, you can even go further. If you have a lot of trouble, you can even cook them and throw again the water out. Now, what I suggest is you just use a type of bean that has less of these. For example, mung beans, obviously in the legume family, all the lentils, also the black-eyed peas that you have in the South, they have less of these oligosaccharides. Then there's soybeans, for example. They have a lot. I can't eat soybeans. I mean, I find them very, like the whole bean, right? And so you can also adjust that way if, you have digestive issues, right? And so, but I love to hear about these. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
I wanted to tell you, I almost forgot, we're serving with the fools the honey almond Okay.
Cantuccini.
Okay.
Honey
there you go.
almond cantuccini, which is a classic in the Mediterranean tradition.
195, page 195. Caleb made that for you yesterday.
Yeah. It's a biscotti made with olive oil. So no butter, nothing. It's olive oil, honey sweetened, a little bit of lemon zest, and whole wheat pastry flour. So tell me what you think once you've had your dessert. So these are wheatberry fools with Grand Marnier figs.
Now, what is a fool?
A fool is really what the British call a dessert in which they fold in heavy whipping cream.
Okay.
Anything can be a fool. So that's what my editor chose. They recommended I call it because it's hard to find the right name, because what would you call this, right? So,
Yeah.
But it's true. I mean, it can also be fruit and cream. That would also be a fool.
Okay, so that's the word.
Yeah.
I know what fool means at my house.
So why is it so quiet?
Dessert.
Do you know what Caleb used for the plantains or guava?
What?
Sorry?
Do you use the plantains or guava
The soft wheat.
We don't have guava. Which other one?
plantains?
No, we don't have. We don't have. But I love them.
Do you have enough?
I love both. I love
Is
both.
that-
I know
is-
them.
Is there one to give?
Did
her?
you say something right now? Someone said something.
Nope.
I don't know who it was. Yeah. So what are you telling me? How is the dessert? Good. Just remember to use orange juice for your kids, okay? It'll still be very good. We've made both. We've made it at events. You have a question in the back. In Germany? Okay. You have basically the honey of the natural vegetation that you have where you are. Like in Greece, for example, we have obviously orange blossom honey and thyme honey, which is very nice. I think, Sue, fill me in, you guys have an amazing source for a raw honey. When I make something that's not cooked, I want to look for a good, thank you. I want to look for a good honey that's, ideally cold also, without any heat processing.
The honey
And-
that I choose to use to sweeten my yogurt and my cream and stuff like that is the sage honey. It's a sweet, mild honey. All of our honeys, of course, are raw. The darker the honey, the stronger the flavor. But I really love the sage honey. It's got a nice, sweet, mild flavor. It's also a little more slowly digested than some of the other honeys. Sage and Tupelo both are that way, which is good for diabetics. A lot of diabetics tell us they can use the sage honey or the Tupelo, either one, because they're higher in certain sugars, levulose sugar as opposed to sucrose. So that makes a nice honey, and it's great because it's sweet, it's mild, it's wonderful to sweeten your yogurt and whipping cream. You don't really even taste that honey flavor there at all. And the nice thing about those two honeys, they never crystallize. If the honey crystallizes, it doesn't hurt the honey. It's just a little more difficult to use, or you have to heat it down to melt it back down. But you always want a raw honey. You do not, even in cooking, I would still get a raw honey. You just don't want the pasteurized honey. There's no reason to pasteurize honey. So,
sorry.
I forgot to tell them, when y'all came in, what we served you there was the honey the almond granola. I can't remember the name of it now.
Honey nut granola.
Yeah, honey nut granola. But we served it with a Greek yogurt that we sweetened with some of our whipped honey. Caleb, do you have a jar there to hold up? But we have a whipped honey that they're infused with orange or strawberry or lemon. So we use the orange to just sweeten, to take the little bit of that tart off of the Greek yogurt. So we sweetened it with that, and then Caleb used a little bit of vanilla extract, a little bit of the
Almond extract.
a little tiny bit of this, and then the almond extract. And I love almond extract. I think it mixed very well with the almonds that were in the granola. So that's what we did there.
Yeah, in Germany we have, for example, wildflower honey that we love a lot. We also have honey, I'm trying to remember the English term, from the flowers, from the blossoms of clay, which grows in the field, clover. So we have clover honey, clover blossom, we have wildflower honey. So these are some of the typical honeys, right? But it's really very much, I mean, it's regionally what you have. I mean, that's the beauty of honey, and that's ideally what you want to look for. I get my honey right now from a legendary honey producer. He's an icon in the honey world in Vermont. But I get this honey only for the honey that I don't heat. Because when you heat honey, some of these nutrients get lost. And so then I look for a more economical honey, you know, that is not as precious as, it's just simply also for testing. I go through so much honey, right? And I need to be somehow reasonable about these things. So, but when I have on my bread or in the yogurt, I will use a very good honey if it's not heated. That's important for me.
That's a hard question. Her question was, if your honey crystallizes, can you be assured that it's raw honey? No, not necessarily, but that is one reason why they pasteurize honey, is to destroy those enzymes so that the honey doesn't crystallize as readily. But so most of your honey in the store that is pasteurized is not going to crystallize as readily. But I don't think I could stand here and guarantee that, no, it's not going to ever crystallize, particularly clover. And clover is the one that's the most common commercial honey that's on the shelf is typically clover honey, and it is the worst to crystallize. But that is one reason that they do pasteurize it, to destroy those enzymes so that it does not readily crystallize. But I have read that they also cut pasteurized honey or commercial honey with a little bit of corn syrup to keep it from
glucose, they do all kinds of things, even in Greece.
So that's why I go ahead, and I understand her having to, economics-wise, but even in cooking, I will still use the raw honey because I feel like that's our only assurance that, you know, it hasn't been messed with. So, but if your honey crystallizes, all I do is take a pot of warm, I just get hot tap water, sit it on my stove, put it on the lowest setting, and even the plastic jug, I'll just sit it down in there so that the water covers whatever the level of honey I have in the jug, and just sit it there and just let it sit there all day or until it's completely liquefied again. And then typically once you get it liquefied like that, it won't crystallize again before you use it. But the clover's the worst, orange blossom and wildflower next, the buckwheat next, but then sage and tupelo, I've never seen them crystallize. Oh.
No, that I don't think. That I don't think you can make that assumption, basically. I don't think you can make that. Now, about the economical honey, I do want to say, I do source my economical honey very well.
Yeah.
I do need to talk about this briefly, but I didn't want to make advertisement for certain companies. But basically, it's still a raw honey, but it's more economical than the one that I buy from this man in Vermont, which is really, it's a jar, you know, that's like $30, it sets me back, and I can't do that. So I'm getting actually very good New Mexico honey, which in research, there's also very little testing of honey in the US. China actually removes the pollen from honey so that we don't know that it's honey from China. So there was a testing, and of all the honeys that they tested, I think about 100 honeys, and the one that I'm using, it's from Trader Joe's, incidentally, it's a New Mexico honey, was actually truly sourceable, and Trader Joe's claims that it's a good honey. Trader Joe's does some things very well, so I would like to trust them. I'm never 100%, you can never be 100% sure, except if you know the person. My very high quality raw honey, I know the person. So, and you know the person.
Our supplier, we've used them since we started in 1992. It's Weeks Honey. They've been in the honey business several generations. They're in South Georgia. Not all of the honey, of course, comes from South Georgia. Sage doesn't grow there. Sage grows out west, but it is American honey. Tupelo, of course, grows in the panhandle of Florida over to Tupelo, Mississippi, that area. Gallberry, of course, is a South Georgia, Florida honey. Orange blossom, of course, is an orange honey, but it is all here in the United States. But our supplier has long time. They have some of the hives themselves, but some of it they have to bring in because they sell more than they can make. Yes? I love it. That was the first. Have you ever had sourwood? That was the first honey. I never liked honey growing up. I thought it was, well, I just didn't like it. And my first experience of really enjoying sourwood honey was my mother-in-law started making sourdough bread. And there's nothing like some sourwood honey on a piece of hot from the oven sourdough bread with a little butter on it and then the honey. Oh my goodness. I love it. So, but like Maria was saying, a lot of times you can get local honey from the local growers, but you're going to pay, you know, a lot for that quart jar. So get it, enjoy it. It's wonderful. But our honey, because we buy it in volume, it's a good price. So it is like she was saying, it's still raw, it's still a good source, but yes, support your local beekeepers because they work hard. We used to have beehives, and they work hard for that. Well, the bees work really hard, but
You had a question. I think the one that
the sage, I use the sage. It's a sweet, mild honey that doesn't crystallize that diabetics can use, and I've just fallen in love with it. My kids, first time I used it, they thought I didn't put honey in the yogurt. They were like, "Mom, did you not sweeten the yogurt with honey?" Because they just really couldn't pick up that honey flavor.
Oh, absolutely. You can just either omit it entirely or you just use orange juice also. I would just use, she was asking if you don't want to have the brandy in the amaranth walnut cookies. Typically when I use, you know, a tablespoon or two for flavor, I mean, a juice will be good. You know, it can be even an apple juice, or you just omit it, right? But in this case, I think I would use the flavoring, I would use orange juice in this case.
Yeah.
You know,
And I will tell you, we did put a little bit of orange juice on the figs. I don't do alcohol at all, and so it was like, whoa, huh. You know, so anyway, we did.
Oh, you can absolutely. Yeah. I'm very sorry. You know, this is something, obviously, all of the things,
it was just
you know,
strong
exactly.
tasting to me.
No. It's a very much in the European tradition because alcohol in cooking, I talk about this also in the book in one of the essays, it's really because you also smell with your nose and you taste with your nose, like it's all connected,
Yes.
right? So it enhances the flavor experience. There's a reason why we pour, you know, a half glass of wine, you know, into a mushroom sauce or something and let it deglaze in the pot. It enhances flavor immensely. I mean, it's really worth trying. And most of the, not here, but most of the alcohol in cooking is gone.
Yes.
So I'm not recommending it for you if you don't want to use alcohol. Absolutely, in the recipes where I use alcohol, just use more like chicken broth, you know, or just even water, right? When I say in the mussels, I make some mussels in the book with farro and white wine. You'll be just totally fine using either, you can also use vegetable broth, or you can even use clam broth as a replacement. So that's totally fine. You're not obliged to use that. I use it for, again, for flavor in the European Old World tradition, right?
So we just toned it down just a slight bit with just a little bit of orange juice there because it seemed a little strong for me, and so I didn't want anybody not to like it because it was a little strong. So if you want to go for it all the way. I think
Any other questions? Any other questions?
All right. Do you want me to get you a chair, a stool, and a
Yeah,
table?
somewhere where it's exactly where we don't have food residue, so we don't dirty their nice books,
And do you
right?
have a pen,
Exactly.
or do I need to get
I
you
do
a
have a signing pen. That's
Okay.
great. Thank you.
Can we maybe bring that chair over here and get Maria a table?
Or
do
if
we wanna
anyone
load-
wants
do we wanna
seconds, we
load
still have some here.
I know. Yeah, take it over there. Yeah. Well, we could.